Welcome to the fantasy audiobook, Pokémon, the legendary trainer who farms at home. Chapter 61. Looking at the nearly 5-meter-long Dragonite in front of him, Chen-Shi became more and more excited. Giratina's Shadow Sneak is not ordinary. Although it looks very similar to the Spirit Sneak, the effect is still very different. First of all, Shadow Sneak is more powerful, starts faster, requires a shorter charging time, and can ignore the opponent's defensive skills. Of course, this last point is useless for Dragonite, because Dragonite has a penetrating characteristic and ignores skills such as defense and light wall. But Chen-Shi is not greedy, and the first 3 points are enough. Because this is already very powerful, a stronger power, faster start, and shorter charging time, which means that it is difficult for the opponent to block the attack of Dragonite with penetrating characteristics. It is almost a sure hit when used. And this skill is not only used for attacking, but also for running away. The more he thought about it, the more excited Chen-Shi became. He said directly, "Duolong, can you show me a Shadow Sneak and hit Garchomp?" As soon as he said this, Garchomp immediately refused to do it. "I was shot even when I was lying down. Why did you hit me? I just came to watch the fun." Chen-Shi scratched his head, a little embarrassed. "Brother Shark, just help me, I will buy you 2 bottles of wine later." Garcho's eyes instantly became hot, and his claws patted his chest. "Garcho, brother, hit him as you like." Chen-Shi immediately became excited. "Quick, Duolong, Shadow Sneak." "Baruya." Duolong Baruto's narrow eyes condensed, and he disappeared instantly. 2 seconds later, Duolong appeared behind Garchomp, and the attack with ghost energy instantly hit Garchomp. I saw that Bite Lu Shark was startled and couldn't help but take a step forward by this force. Bite Lu Shark was secretly shocked. If he hadn't broken through the champion level, this blow would probably barely scratch his skin. Seeing this effect, Chen-Shi became more and more excited and shouted loudly, "How handsome, Duolong!" "Baruya." Duolong flew back to Chen-Shi, his eyes full of excitement. The 2 Duolongs above his head also smiled, and then said something to Duolong Baruto. Duolong Baruto showed a hesitant look on his face. Chen-Shi also understood something. "Duolong, shoot a dragon arrow towards the sky for me to see." Duolong Baruto breathed a sigh of relief, then raised his head, and the dragon energy wrapped around the 2 little Duolongs, and instantly shot them towards the sky. In a trance, Chen-Shi seemed to hear the excited shouts of the 2 little Duolongs. After a long while, the 2 little dragons flew back by themselves, their faces full of satisfaction and excitement. Chen-Shi smiled, "Dragon Baruto, and everyone, let's go back together, I plan to go to the Kanto area. Swampert, go back and tell your parents, and remember to go home tomorrow morning." Letisk. Swampert smiled foolishly, and then ran back home. After that, Chen-Shi turned to Garchomp and said, "Grandma insisted that I take you with me, and you have to go with me tomorrow." Garchomp nodded excitedly. "It's good to go out with Xiaoxi. This kid really gives wine. Well, remember to go home tomorrow morning, I'll leave first." As soon as he got home, Chen-Shi found a silver-haired boy sitting on the sofa at home, talking with his grandparents. "Daigo, why are you here?" Chen-Shi showed a happy look on his face and walked to his friend and sat down. "I'm here to give you some stones," Daigo said with a smile. Then he took out a bag from his backpack, which contained at least a dozen super stones. "Take a look, these are all collected by me privately, a total of 32 pieces, and I agreed to give you half, and these are your 16 pieces." Chen-Shi suddenly realized that it was the boy who sent money online. He took all these super stones and looked at them. There were many super stones of Pokémon, but he didn't need them now, and these were probably used to exchange for resources. However, one of them caught Chen-Shi's attention. After taking it in his hand and looking at it, he said with a little emotion, "You are so lucky." After that, he threw the super stone to Daigo. "This is very important to you, keep it for yourself, don't lose it. There are only a few stones of this level in the world. If I hadn't found one from the Meteor people, I might not have been willing to give it to you." Dao's eyes flickered slightly, and he didn't bother to be polite with his friend. He found a box and carefully packed it. Dao understood that his friend would not joke about some things. Since he said so, it meant that this stone was really important to him, very important. If Chen Shi knew what Daigo was thinking, he would definitely give him a thumbs up. Because it was a mega gold stone. It is no joke to say that there are only a few of this kind of quasi-god mega stone in the world. By the way, this one is for you too. How about the scyther that I asked you to find? As he said that, Chen Shi threw another mega mantis mega stone to Daigo. Anyway, these mega stones were all given by him, so he would not feel bad to give 2 more back. Chen Shi was already satisfied with the remaining 14 pieces. After all, his grandfather had collected them for so long, but Daigo did not give him as many at once. I found a very good scyther, but I haven't found a suitable one for the big mouth. Speaking of this, Daigo was a little regretful. After getting the advice from his friends, he had been looking for these 2 talents when he returned, but unfortunately he had not found the big mouth. Big mouth is more important to you. If you pay a little more attention, this Pokémon will definitely not disappoint you. Okay. Daigo nodded slightly. On the side, Grandpa Chen, who had not spoken since the beginning, spoke up at this time. It's a good thing that you came today. If you came tomorrow, I guess you wouldn't see Xiaoxi. Hearing this, Daigo looked at Chen Shi with some doubts. I'm going to the Kanto region tomorrow, and I don't know how long I'll be gone. You're going to the Kanto region? Yes, I'm going to Pallet Town to find Professor Oak and discuss some things with him. So that's how it is. Daigo suddenly realized that he had also heard about the researcher forum a few days ago. Then I wish you a safe journey. But I have something else to do, so I'll go back first. See you next time. Daigo stood up and prepared to say goodbye. Seeing this, Chen Shi stood up to see him off. After coming out, Daigo waved his hand, summoned the armored bird and flew away. Chen Shi looked up at Daigo's disappearing figure and smiled softly. I'm leaving tomorrow too. Kanto region, Pallet Town, in front of Oak Research Institute. Hello, I have an appointment with Professor Oak, and my name is Severe Choice Difficulty. The security guard at the door twitched his mouth when he heard the name, but he still took out the appointment list to check. Seeing that there was indeed such a person on the list, the security guard opened the door of the institute and let Chen Shi in. After entering the institute, Chen Shi carefully observed the facilities inside. This should not be the main research site. There are no research equipment as he imagined, but some living facilities. Just as Chen Shi was looking at this place, a voice suddenly sounded behind him. Hey, who are you? How did you get in? Turning his head, a child about 7 or 8 years old with brown hair looked at him curiously. Chen Shi reacted and realized that this should be Professor Oak's grandson, Xiaomao. Unexpectedly, Xiaomao is not even 10 years old now, but according to the timeline, this age is also consistent. Then Chen Shi smiled and said, Little boy, is Professor Oak here? I have an appointment with Professor Oak. Are you looking for my grandpa? Xiaomao curled his lips. My grandpa is in the backyard observing his Pokémon now. Come with me. As he said that, Xiaomao walked to a door and motioned Chen Shi to follow him. Soon, Xiaomao took him all the way into the institute and came to the backyard, which is where the Pokémon in the institute usually live. There are small forests and lakes here, and various Pokémon live happily here. Chen Shi also saw a dozen cute Squirtles beside the river. These should be the initial Pokémon that Professor Oak needs to distribute. I guess there must be Charmander and Bulbasaur here. And there is much more here. Just by a glance, Chen Shi has found more than a dozen Pokémon, some of which are very weak and some are relatively powerful. Among them, Chen Shi also saw a quasi-king Blastoise. Pop, where is my grandpa? Xiaomao asked a Pop on the tree. Pop pointed its wings at the woods, indicating that it was inside. Xiaomao nodded his head, and then took Chen Shi into the woods. Soon they found Professor Oak who was feeding Bulbasaur. Seeing his grandson coming with a young man, Professor Oak was a little confused. Xiaomao is here, who is this? Grandpa, he is looking for you, saying that he has an appointment with you. Chen Shi stepped forward and bowed slightly. Hello, Professor Oak, my name is Chen Shi, and I have made an appointment with you online before. Dr. Oak scratched his head. Chen Shi, I know you, the grandson of Lao Chen, the youngest intermediate breeder in the league. But I don't seem to have an appointment with you, right? As soon as these words came out, Xiaomao widened his eyes and looked at the person he had just brought in disbelief. This person is actually the youngest intermediate breeder in the league, and he looks only 16 or 17 years old, right? Also, this person wouldn't lie to me. Grandpa said he didn't make an appointment. Chen Shi's mouth twitched, and he explained, I am the one with severe indecision-making difficulties. Oh, you are the one with severe indecision-making difficulties, ha ha ha. Dr. Oak slapped his forehead and remembered that he had made an appointment with this person to meet at the institute before. But the next moment, Dr. Oak reacted and looked at the young man in front of him in disbelief. What, you are the one with severe indecision-making difficulties? Aren't you a breeder? It's no wonder that Dr. Oak was shocked. The young man in front of him was the only grandson of Lao Chen, a 14-year-old intermediate breeder, and was hailed as a demon who would become a master breeder in the future. Now tell me, are you in the supernova in the research world, the one with severe indecision-making difficulties, the same person? Xiao Mao's eyes sparkled, and there was already a hint of admiration in his eyes when he looked at Chen Shi. Influenced by his grandfather, Xiao Mao usually pays attention to the researcher forum. The recent famous severe choice difficulty syndrome is actually him. And he is also the youngest intermediate breeder in the alliance. Chen Shi smiled bitterly, I am Dr. Oak. I came here to ask you some questions this time. Dr. Oak is an old generation after all. After being shocked, he quickly reacted and his tone was slightly sighing. You are really young and promising. This is not a place to talk. Come with me. After speaking, Dr. Oak enthusiastically pulled Chen Shi all the way back. Soon they returned to the place where Chen Shi had just entered the institute. Dr. Oak asked Chen Shi to sit on the sofa, and then poured him a glass of water. The conditions are simple, don't mind. You can tell me if you have any questions now. It's about the intimacy evolution you mentioned. Quote. Chen Shi waved his hands repeatedly, this is already very good, I don't care about these. Then, he continued, yes, I came to you this time just to ask how to prove the existence of this thing. I am very sure that Riolu and Togepi must be Pokémon that rely on intimacy to evolve, but I can't prove it. Similarly, I also believe that there must be other Pokémon that rely on intimacy to evolve. Dr. Daimon touched his chin and thought for a moment and replied, why are you so sure? Is there any basis? Chen Shi sighed slightly in his heart, why am I so sure? Of course it's because I have seen the animation and settings. Togepi and Riolu are Pokémon that evolve by intimacy. But this cannot be said for sure. Chen Shi can only shake his head, there is no basis, but I believe in my intuition. My friend has a Lucario, and I have been observing him when he was evolving before. Quote. That Lucario, he didn't evolve through any known method. He didn't evolve in battle. It just evolved suddenly when my friend was bandaging his wound. My Togepi also evolved suddenly. But they all have one thing in common, that is, they evolve when they have a closer relationship with their trainers. Professor Oak smiled, but just based on this, you propose the intimacy evolution, which has never appeared before. Isn't it too arbitrary? You have to know that this conjecture is very bold and incredible. If you spend a lot of time and resources on research, the final result is likely to be nothing, because it is not in line with the norm. Professor Oak looked at the boy in front of him meaningfully with deep eyes. Chen Shi shook his head, Dr. Oak, I think researchers should dare to think and do. Only by breaking the so-called rules can we research real results. Dr. Oak's eyes lit up, and he looked at Chen Shi with more satisfaction, ha ha ha, you are right. Quote. Only by breaking the rules can we research out the real stuff. For example, when Zhengwei said he wanted to research a Pokémon transporter, who would not think he was crazy? But he succeeded in the end. Professor Oak sighed with emotion, as if he remembered this student who made him proud. Then Dr. Oak said, when you told me this online before, I had the same feeling as you. After checking a lot of information, I think you are right. Togepi and Riolu are very likely Pokémon that evolved based on the intimacy you mentioned. But this thing is difficult to prove. I thought about it for a long time and finally decided to start with a move. This move is repaying a favor. Hearing this, Chen Shi suddenly realized and looked at Dr. Oak with admiration. You are indeed a veteran doctor. Repaying a favor is a very special move. When a Pokémon uses this move, the closer the relationship with the trainer is, the more powerful this move is. If there is a special calculation method, they can use this move to test the intimacy of Pokémon. As long as it can be confirmed that Riolu and the trainer's intimacy can evolve when it reaches a certain level, then the intimacy evolution proposed by Chen Shi will be successful. It is estimated that by then, the title of severe choice difficulty will rise to a higher level. However, the premise of all this is that Chen Shi must find one, or even 2 or 3 Pokémon that need intimacy evolution. Then slowly train them, let them learn to repay a favor, and then it can be confirmed after a lot of tests and calculations. In this process, it is easy to train Pokémon, but the subsequent tests and calculations require professional instruments, which he does not have. What can be used to confirm it? Buoy. Just then, an Eevee ran out from nowhere and jumped into the arms of Xiaomao next to him. Xiaomao gently stroked his fur. Ibrahimovic snored comfortably and leaned lazily on Xiaomao. Chen Shi saw this scene and suddenly had an idea in his mind. Xiaomao, where did you get this Ibrahimovic? How long have you raised it? Xiaomao was stunned, and then quickly replied, I picked up this Ibrahimovic and raised it for almost half a year. Chen Shi was so happy that he picked it up and raised it for half a year. Looking at their relationship, Ibrahimovic definitely likes Xiaomao very much, and the intimacy is definitely not low. Now it's not the intimacy evolution, and there are papers on Sun Ibrahimovic. Then Chen Shi asked meaningfully, have you thought about what kind of Ibrahimovic you want Ibrahimovic to evolve into? Xiaomao suddenly fell into deep thought. He had never thought about this problem before. After picking up Ibrahimovic, he just treated it as a playmate and never wanted Ibrahimovic to evolve. Now that Chen Shi brought it up, Xiaomao also realized that Eevee could have evolved a long time ago, but he was a little confused and didn't know which one to choose. Chen Shi continued, you should have heard what I just said to your grandfather, right? In fact, Eevee can also evolve through intimacy, and it is a psychic Eevee, and it is very beautiful. Now this kind of Eevee has not been discovered yet, do you want it? Xiaomao's eyes were full of surprises. Eevee evolved through intimacy, or psychic Eevee, or a new evolution of Eevee that has never been discovered. Chen Shi's words were like the whisper of a devil, tempting Xiaomao. I want. Professor Oak watched with interest on the side. Although he had many questions in his mind, he didn't ask directly. For example, how did Chen Shi know that Eevee could evolve through intimacy, and how did he know that Eevee would be a psychic Pokémon after evolution? All these made Professor Oak curious. Seeing Xiaomao taking the bait, Chen Shi continued, as long as you let Ibrahimovic cooperate with us to do some tests and train every day, you can have a psychic Ibrahimovic. Okay. Xiaomao nodded like a chick pecking at rice. The Ibrahimovic in his arms looked confused. No, is this arranged for me? Shouldn't I, the Ibrahimovic in question, be asked what I think? Afterwards, Chen Shi scratched his head a little embarrassedly. Dr. Oak, I don't have professional research equipment. Can you let me borrow your equipment here? Chen Shi originally planned to find an excuse to stay, and now he just proposed it under the excuse of research, and Dr. Oak should not refuse. But what he didn't know was that after listening to Dr. Oak, a hint of imperceptible joy flashed in his eyes. Then he agreed enthusiastically. No problem. It just so happens that you are here to help Xiaomao's Eevee evolve. I am also very interested in the intimacy evolution. Everyone gets what they need. You can just stay here. Anyway, the institute is usually very quiet. Then I'm sorry to bother you. Chen Shi was delighted and thanked him quickly. Xiaomao was also very happy and clamored to help Chen Shi clean up the room. After that, Dr. Oak took him up to the second floor and chose a room that was neither too big nor too small. After settling down, Chen Shi followed Dr. Oak to familiarize himself with the facilities in the institute. Chen Shi finally saw Dr. Oak's laboratory. How should I put it? The laboratory was incredibly large and filled with all kinds of top research equipment, which dazzled him. Chen Shi just called himself a country bumpkin who had never seen the world. Dr. Oak, do you have a training ground here? I also plan to participate in more than one. Can I borrow your training ground for the World Championships in a month? Quote. Professor Oak was stunned, and then looked at the boy in front of him meaningfully. Then he waved his hand. What training ground do you need? Let's go to the backyard and let the Pokémon in the backyard help you train. It's guaranteed to be better than your own training. Chen Shi was overjoyed, followed Professor Oak to the backyard, and released all his partners. Barua, la, wa, Chaco, Chaco. Pokigu flew to Chen Shi angrily, pointing at him with his little hands. Chen Shi smiled bitterly and stretched out his hand to make a sign. Pokigu drooled from the corner of his mouth, and stopped making trouble immediately, happily flying around his trainer. Today, I can have another ice cream. Wow, it's a different color metal monster. Quote. And these few, I don't even know them. Xiao Mao, who had been following them, looked at the metal monster excitedly, and then looked at Lady Waji and Dragon Ball, his eyes full of curiosity. This is Lady Waji, the Pokémon from Carlos. I captured it during my travels. And this one, my initial partner, is called Dragon Ball, a Pokémon with dragon and ghost attributes. Xiao Mao was a little envious. He also wanted to travel, but he was still a long way from the age. Professor Oak looked at these Pokémon and was surprised. This Dragon Ball is already a quasi-king level. That Swampert, Lady Waji and Leafeon are not bad either, they are all gym level. I didn't expect him to be a genius trainer. Professor Oak's thoughts became firmer again. After that, Professor Oak took out a whistle and blew it. After a while, a Dragonite flew out from a distance, slowly landed in front of them, and looked at Professor Oak in confusion. Chen Shi's mind moved, and Dragonite's various data appeared in his eyes. Pokémon. Dragonite. Level. 99. Legendary Peak. Qualification. Legend. Features. Magical Scales. Gender. Male. Skills. Glare, Dragon Tail, Electromagnetic Waves, Flame Fist, Tightening, Wing Attack, Dragon Wave, High-Speed Movement, Slam, Dragon God Dive, Reverse Scale, Pray for Rain, Destruction Death Ray, Dragon Dance, Speed, Mysterious Guardian, Hold, Water Wave. Chen Shi swallowed his saliva and looked at the slightly silly Dragonite in front of him absent-mindedly. Level 99, Legendary Peak. What the hell is this? And that series of skills, almost all that can be learned are learned. Chen Shi had no doubt that this Dragonite could easily beat Garchomp to death. The gap between the two dragons was too big. Everyone said that Professor Oak's Dragonite was very strong, but Chen Shi never dreamed that it was so strong. He had always thought that it was at most the peak of champion. I didn't expect it to be the peak of legend. At this time, Dragonite also noticed Chen Shi's gaze, turned his head and smiled at him, and even stretched out his claws to scratch his head. Chen Shi's eyes twitched slightly. Do you still look like a big boss? It is worthy of being praised as an extremely gentle Pokémon. Professor Oak said, Old buddy, please help train these little guys. As he said, Professor Oak pointed to Dragonite and the others beside him. Dragonite turned his head and his eyes were immediately attracted by Dragonite. This dragon has such a terrible talent. Dragonite immediately patted his chest and agreed. Woo! Chen Shi covered his face. It was hard to imagine that a Dragonite that was so strong could make such a cute sound. Professor Oak smiled and said, You don't have to worry about it now. My old friend is very strong. There will be no problem training these Pokémon. No problem, Dr. Oak. Thank you for your help. What's the problem? Don't worry. Dragonite will send them back at night. Dr. Oak waved his hand. Chen Shi didn't say anything more and gave his partners a serious reminder. You should train with Dragonite during this period. Remember to listen to Dragonite's arrangements and don't make trouble. Many Pokémon nodded like chicks pecking at rice. Their intuition told them that this Dragonite was very strong, so strong that it was scary. It would be good to train with him. Chen Shi smiled and took all of them back into the Pokeballs and handed them to Dragonite. Dragonite held the Pokeball, said hello to Professor Oak, and then flew away. Chen Shi was a little reluctant. This was the first time that all his companions left him. Professor Oak patted his shoulder and said, It's okay. We'll be back in the evening anyway. Let's hurry up and start your research. Chen Shi exhaled and nodded seriously. I have to work hard too. In the days that followed, Chen Shi and Professor Oak focused on Eevee. On the first day, the two found a cat boss who could repay a favor and tried to let Eevee learn to repay a favor. In addition, the two were also simultaneously researching a move power test machine, hoping to modify it and make it a machine that can test the power of moves by repaying a favor. On the second day, the two found a large number of Pokémon that could repay a favor in the backyard, and tested the power of their repaying a favor over and over again, and subtracted the level bonus. On the third day, Eevee was very smart and had learned to repay a favor. The power she used was very powerful, but Chen Shi and Professor Oak had not yet made a machine to test intimacy. On the 6th day, the two digitized the power of repaying kindness and set the maximum power of repaying kindness to 102. This should also represent the upper limit of intimacy. At Chen Shi's suggestion, the intimacy was divided into 255, and a simple intimacy tester was made. When Evie used repaying kindness, the power reached 87.2, which means that the intimacy between Evie and Xiaomao reached 218. Chen Shi immediately asked Xiaomao to accompany Evie more every day, and asked him to massage Evie, and also asked Xiaomao to accompany her to train every day. Because this Evie was only 2 points away from evolution. On the 13th day, Evie's intimacy finally reached the evolution standard of 220, and now it only needs to be upgraded during the day. On the same day, Evie suddenly emitted a white light while training. This excited the three people who had been observing her. Soon, the light of evolution dissipated, and what appeared in front of the three people was an Evie that had never been discovered before. She looks like a big cat, with purple eyes, purple hair all over her body, and a ruby on her head. She looks quite noble. Chen Shi immediately pretended to be surprised and said, "Dr. Oak, my guess is right, intimacy evolution does exist. As long as Evie reaches the intimacy level with the trainer and then increases her level during the day, she can evolve into Sun Evie." Yes, your guess is right, intimacy evolution does exist. Dr. Oak sighed a little, and then asked the doubts in his heart. "Little boy, you seem to have known about the existence of a Pokémon called Solagoon and how it evolves." Chen Shi was stunned, then found an excuse and said, "I have superpowers and can understand what Pokémon say since I was a child. I met a wild Solagoon while traveling before. She was upgraded in battle and then evolved into Solagoon. I always thought it wouldn't be that simple, otherwise Solagoon would have been discovered long ago. Now it can be confirmed that it is due to intimacy." Professor Oak smiled and didn't say whether he believed it or not, but he didn't ask any more questions. "Now I can congratulate you. Not only did you discover a new Eevee evolution type called Solagoon, but you also confirmed the existence of intimacy. This is another great discovery in the world." Chen Shi shook his head. "This is not my own achievement. Without your help, I would never have been able to confirm the existence of intimacy." Professor Oak smiled and didn't say anything, but he looked at Chen Shi with more satisfaction. The next morning, the researcher forum was shaken again. Because Severe Choice Difficulty published another paper, and 3 more. New Evolution of Eevee, Sun Eevee, Intimacy Evolution, Conjecture of Moon Eevee. Originally, everyone was skeptical about the intimacy evolution because there was too little verification data. How could such a large experiment be confirmed by the evolution of an Eevee? That time, it was not necessary to conduct a large number of experiments. But when they saw an extra name in the paper below, they no longer had any doubts. This time, the paper was no longer the name of Severe Choice Difficulty alone, but also a heavyweight figure, Oak Yukinari. Who doesn't know Professor Oak from the Kanto region? Not only was his name on the paper, but he also personally commented and confirmed it. This means that Severe Choice Difficulty's intimacy evolution is not wrong, and Pokémon really has this incredible way of evolution. Of course, Chen Shi also proposed some Pokémon that need intimacy evolution later, such as Togepi, Riolu, etc. The comments below are one after another. Awesome, this guy with indecisiveness actually discovered a new evolution of Eevee, Solar Eevee. How many evolutions does this Eevee have? It turns out that big guys publish papers in batches. More than half a month ago, he published 3 heavyweight papers, and now there are 3 more, and the quality is even higher than the previous 3. Who is this guy with indecisiveness? He is so awesome. Even Dr. Yamanashi of Sinnoh and Dr. Otamaki of Hoenn region gave high praise. In Sinnoh region, Dr. Mustard looked at the paper on the computer and sighed. This kid actually confirmed the existence of this thing, it's incredible. He also discovered a new evolution of Eevee, and it's a psychic Eevee. On the side, Sharona hugged her arms. "Grandma, I said Chen Shi wouldn't talk nonsense, this intimacy evolution definitely exists." Dr. Mustard rolled her eyes. Okay, your Chen Shi is the best. Everything he says is right." Sharona opened her mouth to say something, but in the end, she said nothing. Looking at her granddaughter's back as she left, Dr. Mustard Orchid snorted coldly. Little girl, you're talking about me. Looking back to the Oak Research Institute, Dr. Oak made a phone call. The junior researcher behind Chen Shi's account has now become a senior researcher, skipping the intermediate researcher. Senior researchers are not ordinary, and they can already apply to the Alliance to establish a research institute. The annual research funding is 100 million, and there are other research props that can be applied to the Alliance. When Chen Shi knew about this, what else could he say? He could only say that Dr. Oak was awesome. In the evening, Chen Shi personally cooked a large table of dishes to show his affection. Xiaoxi, your cooking skills are good. You can compete with Hanako. Yes, Grandpa is right. The two grandpas and grandsons who eat instant noodles all day are wolfing down their food, and they can't even speak clearly. Speaking of instant noodles, Chen Shi is also tired. Dr. Oak really eats instant noodles every day, and he eats with his grandson. It's really unique. Xiao Mao took a big sip of water and patted his stomach. It's comfortable. Since my sister went out to travel, except for the food that Aunt Hanako sent from time to time, this is the best meal I have ever had. Chen Shi looked at Dr. Oak helplessly. Look at what he prepared for the child. He can say such words just by eating some home-cooked meals. It can be seen that he eats instant noodles a lot. Dr. Oak was a little embarrassed and immediately changed the subject. Xiaoxi, what are your plans next? Are you preparing for the World Championships? Chen Shi was stunned, and then fell silent. He didn't know how to start. He would definitely participate in the World Championship, but if he didn't reveal something, it would be difficult for him to win the championship. But if he revealed something, he was afraid that he would not be able to keep it. Moreover, the purpose of coming here was to get in touch with Professor Oak, and then hope that he would speak for him and stand up for him in the future. But Chen Shi couldn't say this. He had been very kind to him for nearly half a month, helping him train Pokémon, transforming machines, and verifying the evolution of intimacy. Now he had to ask him to do something, and Chen Shi was a little embarrassed. After all, he didn't owe him anything, so he couldn't always ask him for help. Then Chen Shi said vaguely, well, I plan to participate in the World Championship. World Championship. Xiao Mao's eyes lit up. He had also heard about the World Championship. Grandpa said that it was a large-scale event that brought together all the talents under the age of 20 from the entire league. All the talents under the age of 20, if they could win the championship, what a great honor it would be. When Xiao Mao thought of this, he wanted to grow up immediately and participate in the World Championship. Dr. Oak was not polite and said directly, I know this competition. You are also very strong. There is a high probability that you can enter the top 16. I will watch your game then. I will watch it too. Xiao Mao raised his hand excitedly. Chen Shi smiled and didn't say much. Seeing him like this, Dr. Oak narrowed his eyes and said, the people participating in this competition are not simple. You kid don't want to win the prize. I'm not trying to discourage you. Your current strength is not enough. Chen Shi touched the necklace under his clothes and whispered, maybe. Dr. Oak was a little surprised this time. He was now sure that this kid really wanted to win the prize. This is not an easy thing. Then, Dr. Oak said seriously, Xiaoxi, you are very talented, are you willing to be my student? Chen Shi was stunned, and stood there blankly, at a loss. He never thought that Dr. Oak would actually say that he wanted to be his teacher. This sudden surprise directly stunned Chen Shi. You know, this is Dr. Oak, the top boss in the world, and now he actually said that he would accept him as a student. I asked you if you were willing to be my student. Dr. Oak repeated it again. Yes, of course I am willing. Chen Shi hurriedly replied, then stood up and bowed respectfully to Dr. Oak. Teacher, there are not so many etiquettes in this world, no kneeling, no tea, etc. Just bow like him, and call him teacher. Professor Oak smiled now. Okay, Xiaoxi, you stay here for the time being. Let me help you train Pokémon, it's much better than you training at home. Chen Shi nodded. I understand, teacher. At night, Chen Shi came to the backyard, released his companions, and took out energy cubes to feed them. Dragon, you have grown up, and your appetite has also increased. Baruya. Dragon Baruto turned his head away, not wanting to pay attention to him, and continued to stuff energy cubes into his mouth, and even gave some to the little dragon on his head. Charmer, you are making rapid progress, and you will soon catch up with a certain little glutton. Chen Shi was not talking nonsense. Charmer is now level 44, the middle elite stage, and Pokémon has just entered the late elite stage today. However, Charmer usually trains desperately, so it is normal for him to make such progress. They don't train every day with Dragonite. Dragonite often takes them to challenge Pokémon in the backyard. Combat experience can be said to be increasing. Letisk. Suddenly, Swampert ran over and scratched his head. Chen Shi had no choice but to take out another energy cube from his backpack. Eat, lie down after eating, I will give you a massage later. Soon, Swampert nodded, then grabbed the energy cube and started eating. Then, Chen Shi started to massage them from Dragon Baruto, which was something Chen Shi often did. Otherwise, if they were not helped to relax their muscles after training and fighting, they would form hidden injuries over time. So Chen Shi basically massaged them once in a while. These guys also liked Chen Shi's massage because it was so comfortable. Look, Dragon is now lying on the ground in comfort, and he doesn't even want to fly. While massaging Mrs. Wajia, Professor Oak came over. You have a good relationship with your Pokémon. Chen Shi chuckled, they are all my partners. Professor Oak walked to a stone and sat down. You seem very confident about the World Championship. Do you think you can win the prize? Chen Shi paused while massaging, and then said, Teacher, should I not have confidence? I have seen those geniuses, the battle goddess Sharona of Sinnoh, Zifuchi Daigo of Hoenn, Du of the Yulong family, and Kona of the Silver Academy. Professor Oak asked, then do you still have confidence? Of course, teacher, I should not have confidence. Chen Shi sighed, then he said, do you know? I was an intermediate breeder at the age of 11, and I was already an advanced breeder when I went on a trip. But I didn't take the test until I was 14 because I couldn't hide it. I dare not say my identity as an advanced breeder until now. I dare not use my real name in the researcher forum. I only dare to use the online name of severe choice difficulty. My talent as a trainer is actually very good, but I dare not show it. When I go on a trip, I can only go to Sinnoh, and I dare not challenge the gym. You know why. Dr. Oak was a little moved. He didn't expect Chen Shi's talent to be so high. Then he thought about it seriously and asked, is it because he stands out in the forest? Yes, because he stands out in the forest. You know my grandfather, and you know what is on my family's farm. The Chen family has too many things, and there are many jealous people. Too many people don't want me to grow up. Chen Shi was a little bitter. This was something he had always kept in his heart. Dr. Oak sighed, and then he said firmly, then you don't have to be afraid now. With me here, no one will dare to touch you. Hearing this, Chen Shi was silent for a while, and smiled, Teacher, I have hidden far more than these. If some things are exposed, I'm afraid the entire alliance will be shaken, and some people may not even give you face. In this case, will you still protect me? Dr. Oak smiled, is this why you are confident that you can win a prize in the World Championship? No, not a prize. My goal is to win the championship. Chen Shi shook his head, his tone more firm than ever before. Since the last time he talked with Daigo, Chen Shi's goal has always been to win the championship. He doesn't want to hide anymore, and he also wants to be as dazzling and confident as Yulongdu and the others. This is not to let him down when he came to this world, and this is how he can fulfill his promise to Swampert and the others. Professor Oak's smile slowly faded, and he said word by word, Xiaoxi, remember what I said. As long as I, Shicheng Oak, am still alive, no one dares to touch your things. This is his confidence as the former champion of the Kanto region. Chen Shi exhaled and looked at his teacher with a smile. Do you want to know what else I have hidden? I think you will be interested, teacher. Dr. Oak also became interested and took a look at his student first. What else is hidden? But he didn't take it too seriously, just thinking that Xiaoxi still had a few Pokémon hidden. Okay, take it out and let me see. Seeing the expression on Professor Oak's face, Chen Shi didn't waste any words and patted Madame Wajia. Show me the fairy energy. Fairy energy. Professor Oak was stunned. Wah, Madame Wajia agreed, and purple energy condensed in her hand. The next second, Professor Oak rushed over and stared at the purple fairy energy. Is this an attribute energy that has never been seen before? Professor Oak's lips trembled, his face full of disbelief. A brand new attribute, which means that there is an undiscovered attribute in the world. And this attribute was just called fairy by Xiaoxi. Xiaoxi, what's going on? Chen Shi shrugged. Just like what you see, I discovered a new attribute, called the fairy attribute. Fairy attribute. Fairy attribute. There are really 18 attributes in the world. Dr. Oak muttered to himself, his eyes never leaving Mrs. Hua Jia's hand. Hua. Mrs. Hua Jia turned her head and glanced at Chen Shi. Chen Shi waved his hand, and Mrs. Hua Jia took back the fairy energy. Teacher, don't watch it, what's so good about it? How can I not watch it? Dr. Oak was anxious, grabbing Chen Shi's shoulders and shaking him hard. This is an epic discovery, the 18th attribute in the world. Let Madame Waji condense it for me to see, I have to study it. Chen Shi held his forehead. Teacher, there will be plenty of time in the future, don't worry. If you really want to study, go find the Marillion in the Research Institute, I will try to see if I can make her awaken the fairy type. What? Professor Oak yelled, his expression full of excitement, you mean Marillion is also a fairy-type Pokémon? Isn't Madame Waji the only fairy Pokémon in the world? Seeing this, the Pokémon such as Duolong and others ran far away, not daring to get too close, especially Madame Waji. Barua, is this old man crazy? Who of you will save Xiaoxi? Choco, then you go. Other Pokémon nodded one after another, focusing their attention on Duolong Baruto. Doran Baruto glanced at the crazy old man, gritted his teeth, flew forward and pulled Professor Oak away. Chen Shi finally breathed a sigh of relief, he was almost shaken to death just now. I can only say that he is worthy of being a super newcomer. Little boy, I was wrong just now, you are not excited enough. Professor Oak touched his head embarrassedly and laughed awkwardly. It is not Dr. Oak's fault, because if another professor came to know this news, he would probably be the same as Dr. Oak. Chen Shi did not care and waved his hand. I am fine, teacher, the fairy energy has not yet revived. Many fairy Pokémon have not awakened and have been classified as other Pokémon. For example, Madame Waji, she is still considered a grass Pokémon. Yes, you are right. Dr. Oak walked back and forth, his face full of excitement. How could there be only Madame Waji Pokémon in the fairy type? There must be many that have not been discovered. Then, Dr. Oak noticed what Chen Shi said and frowned. What do you mean by the fairy energy not revived? Helplessly, Chen Shi could only take out the rhetoric he had with his grandparents and say it again. Dr. Oak thought it made sense, and the facts should be similar to what Chen Shi guessed. Because only this can make sense, otherwise the fairy energy is so obvious, it must have been discovered long ago. How can it be Chen Shi's turn? Suddenly, Dr. Oak thought of something and became excited. Xiaoxi, this is a great discovery, you may become a doctor. Dr. Oak was not talking nonsense. In his eyes, the discoverer of the 18th new attribute is not worthy of a doctor. This is not the biggest joke in the world. Chen Shi shook his head. Teacher, have you forgotten? I'm only 16 years old. Dr. Oak was stunned, and then a little discouraged. Yes, Xiaoxi was only 16 years old, too young, not even an adult. At this age, if you are strong, you can be a champion, but you can't be a doctor. Because this thing involves too many things, even if you are the discoverer of the 18th attribute, you may not be able to convince the public. Dr. Oak sighed. If you wait a few more years, this doctorate will not be able to escape. He really felt a little regretful. Obviously everything is enough, but the age is not enough. Chen Shi waved his hand nonchalantly. It's okay, if the 18th attribute is not enough, just add another one, I will definitely be the doctor. Add another one. Dr. Oak was almost driven crazy by this sentence. Won't you find the 19th attribute? Dr. Oak trembled all over, this kid wouldn't hide another attribute. What are you thinking? Chen Shi rolled his eyes. There are only 18 attributes in this world, there are no more. Is that so? That's not bad. Dr. Oak was not disappointed, having the 18th attribute was not bad. Then he asked, then what else have you researched, show it to me. Dr. Oak rubbed his hands and looked at Chen Shi expectantly, just like a wretched old man. But it's not Dr. Oak's fault, because he just heard what Chen Shi said, this new discovery is not less than the 18th attribute. It's definitely a big deal. Chen Shi grinned, took out a Mega Evolution, and threw it to Swampert in the distance. Swampert caught it immediately and looked at his trainer excitedly. Is it coming again? That kind of power, no matter how many times, makes him addicted. Then Chen Shi pulled out a necklace from his neck, on which hung a colorful stone. Damu looked at it in confusion, but did not make a sound to disturb him. Chen Shi pulled off the keystone, looked at Swampert, and said with a smile, "Let the teacher see our true power." Le Sui. Swampert nodded excitedly. Then come on, Swampert, Mega Evolution. As Chen Shi's hand touched the keystone, colorful light burst out, and the bond between the two was connected. Le Sui. Swampert roared, emitting the light of Mega Evolution all over his body, and his body shape changed rapidly. Before, Chen Shi had practiced with Swampert many times, so the time required for super evolution was greatly shortened and the duration was longer. Professor Oak stared at this scene blankly, muttering to himself. This is impossible. This is impossible. This is totally unreasonable. Swampert is obviously the final evolution. Soon, Super Swampert appeared in front of Professor Oak, and Professor Oak couldn't help but believe it. How is this possible? Professor Oak immediately stepped forward to observe. The strength has actually increased from the peak of the gym to the early stage of the Quasi-King. What kind of evolution is this? While observing, Professor Oak muttered. The power should also be greatly enhanced. No, defense should also be enhanced. Quote. This is an all-round enhancement. Too incredible. Chen Shi sighed helplessly and directly let Swampert quit super evolution. If he let Professor Oak do the research, even if Chen Shi ran out of energy, he would not be able to start. But when he saw Swampert degenerate to its original state, he was shocked again. How can it change back? I have never heard of evolution and degeneration. Then, Chen Shi explained to Professor Oak what super evolution is. The latter suddenly realized it and looked at Chen Shi with the eyes of a monster. Xiao Shi, you are really a monster. You said you wanted to compete for a championship. I didn't believe it at first, but I think I believe it now. No wonder you said that many people in the league would be restless if you took this thing out. You kid really didn't brag. You gave me 2 big surprises. Quote. Chen Shi scratched his head a little embarrassedly. It's not as amazing as you say. I'm just doing some research. Dr. Oak's mouth twitched. Just doing some research. How can you find out the evolution of so many elves, prove the evolution of intimacy, find the 18th attribute, and even research out a super evolution? Then I want to do some research too. Don't be modest, kid. Everything that belongs to you is yours, and no one can escape. Don't worry. Chen Shi smiled and said nothing. Then Dr. Oak sighed and said, you gave me 2 big surprises today. Since you want to participate in the World Championships, I'll give you a few surprises too. Come with me. Quote. After that, Professor Oak walked towards the research institute. Chen Shi was a little curious, and after collecting all the Pokémon, he immediately followed. After that, Professor Oak took Chen Shi to his own room. Then he opened a secret door, and after entering, Chen Shi was completely dumbfounded. Professor Oak said with a smile, just pick a few pieces, just as a gift from my teacher. Chen Shi swallowed his saliva, his eyes full of heat. What is in front of Chen Shi? All kinds of top-level gems, all kinds of top-level medicinal materials, and top-level evolution stones. But what is that hanging over there? 3 silly birds, feathers of the 3 holy birds, there must be at least dozens of them. But when Chen Shi approached, he carefully looked at the system introduction and realized that many of these were champion-level feathers of the 3 holy birds. But this is also very precious. No matter what, the 3 holy birds are all divine beasts. If you take one out, it will definitely be auctioned at a high price. Chen Shi seriously suspected that these feathers were plucked by Professor Oak and Dragonite. Among them, there is a real Moltres' original tail feather. What is the real Moltres? It is the only Moltres that has mastered the priesthood, and the original tail feather is also a very important feather of him. This is already a legendary resource. If it is used for the evolution of Charmeleon, Charmeleon may take off. Seeing Chen Shi staring at the Moltres tail feather, Professor Oak explained, that feather is not ordinary. It contains the flame of Moltres. If you use it on a fire-type Pokémon, you will definitely gain something. You can use it on Charmeleon. I see that he is already in the middle elite stage and has not evolved yet. It's just right to use this. Chen Shi grinned and nodded in agreement. Then he rolled his eyes and said, Teacher, you have too many good things here. I don't know how to choose. How about you recommend some? Dr. Oak was stunned and laughed and scolded, You are really smart. Okay, then I will pick 2 more for you. I can't have more. I can't bear to give it up. As he said, Dr. Oak walked to a shelf, took down a metal box from the top and opened it. Take a look. This metal monster for you will be of great benefit to its future. Chen Shi looked over immediately. But even if Dr. Oak's selection must be good, I didn't expect it to be so good. The fragment of Regisquirrel's body contains the essence of Regisquirrel, and it is extremely effective for Steel-type Pokémon. Chen Shi immediately decided that the second piece was this one. Because this fragment was obviously unusual, it was very likely the body fragment of the original Regisquirrel. Metal monsters are in luck. After closing the box and holding it in his hand, Chen Shi said with a smile, Teacher, what is the other one? Looking at Chen Shi's servile look, Professor Oak found it a little funny. You kid can still have such an expression. Then he shook his head and took out another box from the top. Take a look. Chen Shi immediately took it and opened it. Inside lay a white palm-sized diamond-shaped fragment. The core fragment of the advanced secret realm, containing a large amount of attribute energy. Closing square bracket. Professor Oak explained. This is one of the fragments of the core of a secret realm. It contains a large amount of non-attribute energy, which can be absorbed by Pokémon of all attributes, greatly accelerating their own growth. Your Pokémon's strengths are uneven, and this is just right. It can improve their strength in a short time without side effects. This thing is most suitable for you now. Chen Shi closed the box excitedly after hearing this. This is indeed the most suitable thing for him at present. With this, Madame Wajia and Metal Monster can improve their strength in a short time, so Chen Shi will be more confident in the World Championship. Thank you, teacher, this is too precious to me. Okay, you kid are still being polite to me. After saying this, Professor Oak took off the tail feather of the flamingo and threw it to him. Then he took Chen Shi out and explained. In fact, this kind of legendary resource is not particularly precious to some people, because it is also divided into levels. For example, the tail feathers of this Moltres do not improve Pokémon above the champion level, but it is different for those below the champion level. And the secret core sounds powerful, but it is not particularly effective for champion level Pokémon, unless it is the top level. I suggest you not use it on Dragon Ball and Swampert, because they can't improve much. If you give it to those elite Pokémon, Kamui, this month is enough for them to reach the peak of the gym. Chen Shi widened his eyes. Teacher, you are not kidding me, right? This thing can make Charmeleon and others reach the peak of the gym in more than a month. Professor Oak patiently explained, you should also know about the secret realm. It can be said to be a small world. Its core contains a lot of energy, and it is harmless. The effect of this kind of high-level secret realm fragment will only be better than what I said, not much worse. You can also just give it to Doranbaruto, and it will definitely be no problem to upgrade it to the king level. Chen Shi was completely stunned. This secret core fragment was even more precious than he had imagined. It could actually allow Dragonite, who had just broken through to the quasi-king level, to directly reach the king level. And it had no side effects. This was quite scary, because if Chen Shi really wanted to improve his strength, there was actually a way, such as using a large number of attribute gems on Dragonite and the others. But this method of improving strength was meaningless, because through this method, the energy in the Pokémon's body would not be very obedient, and in battle, at most only 5 points out of 10 could be used. To put it bluntly, it was just a showpiece, good-looking but useless. In the end, it would take a lot of time to channel and use these energies, which was not worth the loss. It would be better to train slowly or improve strength through battle. However, Chen Shi did not intend to give Dragonite only one Pokémon, even if this secret fragment could upgrade him to the king level. Because Dragonite Baruto had already received a lot, and other Pokémon had not received any good things. If even this secret fragment is given to him, even if the other Pokémon don't say anything, they will still feel uncomfortable. In this way, the team will be dispersed, which is what Chen Shi doesn't want to see. Chen Shi plans to follow Professor Oak's method and not give this secret fragment to Dragonite and Swampert. It will be more useful to give it to other Pokémon. If they can be promoted to the peak of the gym, then the chance of the World Championship will be greater. You know, he still has Charizard X and Metagross Mega Evolution Stone in his hand. The peak of the gym Mega Evolution, on paper, is enough to reach the limit of the early stage of the Quasi-King. In addition to the blessing of all aspects, the middle stage of the Quasi-King is not impossible to deal with. After another 5 days, Chen Shi lived in Professor Oak's research institute. Every morning, he helped Professor Oak feed the Pokémon in the backyard, and occasionally took Xiaomao and Xiaoji to play. Yes, Xiaoji, he is still a little kid now, playing crazy with Xiaomao all day long. Chen Shi knew him not long after he came to Oak's research institute. Now they are very familiar with each other. In the afternoon, he will also go to train with Pokémon, challenge the Pokémon in the backyard, and cultivate tacit understanding. Professor Oak really didn't fool Chen Shi. During this period, Madame Waji and the others have made rapid progress, almost day by day. The main reason is because of the secret core. Since Madame Waji and the others absorbed the fragment of the secret core, the level has been rising. Pokémon even broke through the gym level directly, and Chen Shi plans to evolve her in 2 days. It just so happens that I will go back today to write a paper on the evolution of Pokémon. Just when Chen Shi finished feeding today's food, 2 little brats in the distance shouted and ran over. Uncle Master, Uncle Master. Because Chen Shi recognized Professor Oak as his teacher, Xiaomao called him Uncle Master, which was fine. Chen Shi smiled and rubbed the heads of the 2 little brats. What's wrong? What happened? Why are you so anxious? Xiaoji shouted excitedly. Brother Chen Shi, your metal monster is going to evolve, go and see it. Xiaomao interrupted dissatisfiedly. You can't call me Uncle Master brother, so I will be younger than you, right? Xiaoji scratched his head in confusion, not quite understanding what Xiaomao meant. Chen Shi didn't have time to care about the 2 of them now, and hurriedly ran deep into the backyard. But when he found the metal monster, it was no longer a metal monster, but a shiny silver Metagross. On the side, except for Dragonite and Swampert, Chen Shi's other Pokémon were here. In the morning, they absorb the core fragments of the secret realm together. In the afternoon, they will go with Chen Shi to challenge other Pokémon in the backyard. Dragon and Swampert will train with Dragonite and Marion in the morning. Metagross saw his trainer coming and flew to him excitedly to share his joy. Chen Shi looked at the metal monster in front of him with some regret and touched one of Metagross's big claws. Sorry, Metagross, I didn't witness the moment you evolved. Metagross shook his head and said it didn't matter. Pokémon. Metagross, Shiny. Level. 45 Mid-Elite. Qualification. Quasi-Legend. Features. Eternal Pure Body. Gender. None. Skills. Impact, Telekinesis, Metal Claws, Bullet Fist, Telekinesis Hammer, Arm Hammer, Slam, Psychokinesis, Electromagnetic Levitation, Cannon Beam, Comet Fist, Iron Wall, High-Speed Movement, Claw Grinding, Hold, Thunder Fist, Ice Fist. After taking a look at the data of Metagross, Chen Shi nodded with satisfaction. It was a mid-elite strength and a quasi-legendary qualification. It was no worse than Daigo's Metagross. Have you finished eating the fragment I gave you? Metagross shook his head and took out a fragment from somewhere. It was the fragment of Regis Chalu's body, but now it was only 1/3 of the original. Those that disappeared were slowly eaten by Metagross. Chen Shi nodded and instructed. Eat the rest slowly, plus the core fragment of the secret realm. It will be enough for you to quickly improve your strength in a short period of time. I will take you to participate in the World Championships at that time. Metagross nodded fiercely. He joined the team relatively late and his strength was low. He originally thought that he would not have a share in the World Championships. Unexpectedly, the trainer found him a treasure that had a strong attraction to him, and a fragment containing a large amount of non-attribute energy. It can make him grow rapidly in a short period of time, and he also has the opportunity to fight on that grand stage. Thinking of this, Metagross's calm brain couldn't help but become excited. For Metagross, besides its trainer, its favorite thing is fighting. Okay, you just evolved, I'll let you fight a few more games in the afternoon, and try to get familiar with your new body as soon as possible. And you have to learn the skills you just learned quickly. I'll tell you which skills to focus on in the afternoon. Metagross agreed, and then continued to run to absorb the energy of the fragments. At this time, Charmeleon ran over and grabbed Chen Shi's hand. Wow, Chen Shi was delighted. You broke through the gym level and want to evolve. Charmeleon nodded. He felt that he could evolve and there was no point in suppressing it. Okay. Chen Shi immediately took out the box containing the tail feathers of Moltres, and then take off Charmeleon's stone. The moment the stone was taken off, Charmeleon suddenly showed the light of evolution. Chen Shi directly threw the tail feathers of Moltres to Charmeleon. Charmeleon also knew that this would be good for him, so he took it and integrated it into himself with the power of evolution. Soon Charmeleon's body changed rapidly, slowly growing wings and becoming taller. After a while, a majestic Charizard that was nearly 3 meters tall appeared in front of Chen Shi. Pokémon. Charizard. Level. 50 Early Gym. Qualification. Quasi-Legend. Features. Fierce Fire. Gender. Male. Skills. Grab, Spark, Smoke Screen, Dragon Breath, Split, Dragon Claw, Dragon God Dive, Primal Power, Dragon Tail, Big Word Explosion, Hold, Jet Flame, Flame Vortex, Flash Charge, Flame Fang, Flame Fist. He flew into the sky, roaring wantonly, as if to vent all the grievances he had felt before. Chen Shi and the other Pokémon did not disturb him, but just looked up at him quietly. Soon, Charizard finished venting and slowly landed in front of his trainer. Congratulations, Charizard. Roar. Charizard's eyes were a little wet, and he took a step forward and hugged Chen Shi carefully. Chen Shi did not resist, and patted his body gently. Okay, Charizard, you are grown up now, and the past is over. I said I would take you to the highest stage in the world and make those who abandoned you regret it. You have to work hard. Roar. Charizard let go of Chen Shi, and the scene of their first meeting flashed in his eyes, and then he nodded firmly. Seeing this, other Pokémon came forward to congratulate Charizard. Charizard looked at Madame Wajia and the others, as well as the Metagross that had been competing with him, scratched his head, and grinned. He now has a good trainer and a partner who can be trusted. It feels so good. Choco Yi. Pokojigu looked at Chen Shi eagerly. She also wanted to evolve. Seeing her companions around her evolving one after another, she finally couldn't sit still. Pokojigu had heard from Chen Shi that she could evolve once more, and she would be very powerful after evolving. Chen Shi hesitated for a moment, but still said, "Do you really want to evolve now?" Choco Yi. Pokojigu nodded excitedly immediately, indicating that she wanted to evolve now. Okay then. Chen Shi finally agreed. In fact, it was no problem for Pokojigu to evolve now, but she had just broken through the gym level, and he wanted Pokojigu to stabilize for 2 days. Since she wanted to evolve so much, Chen Shi naturally couldn't bear to refuse. Afterwards, Chen Shi took out the light stone that he had prepared long ago, handed it to Pokojigu, and then took out the camera, wanting to record this scene. Come on, touch it, and you can evolve. Pokojigu flew happily in front of Chen Shi, and just when her little hand was about to touch the light stone, Pokojigu hesitated. She glanced at her trainer, and then looked back at Leafeon. Booby. Leafeon gave her an encouraging look, hoping that the little sister would evolve quickly. Pokojigu looked around, and her companions looked at her with blessing eyes. Come on, Pokojigu, isn't this the opportunity you have been waiting for? Pokojigu nodded heavily, and her little hand touched the light stone. The light of evolution suddenly shone, and Pokojigu's body quickly grew larger, and soon became a little taller than Chen Shi. Her arms disappeared, and she turned into a Pokémon that looked like a bird and a bit like an airplane. Her body still had the red and blue pattern of the Pocopi period, and there were 3 feathers on her head, the middle one was white, and the sides were red and blue. She has triangular wings, and her 2 little feet are close together. This is the evolution of Pokigo, Pocus. Soon, the light of evolution dissipated, and a brand new Pocus appeared in front of Chen Shi. Congratulations, Pocus. Choco. Pocus happily looked at her new body, then spread her wings and flew. Chen Shi's mind moved, and Pocus's data appeared in his eyes. Pocus. Level. 51 Early Gym. Qualification. Champion. Characteristics. Tianan. Gender. Female. Skills. Call, Slap, Yawn, Finger Wave, Primal Power, Life Drop, Acting Coquettishly, Treasure, Meditation, Round Pupil, Air Slash, Swallow Return, High-Speed Star, Divine Power, Magic Flash, Moon Power, Absorbing Kiss, Brave Bird Attack. It looks pretty good, and she has learned several skills at once, even including the flying type ultimate move Brave Bird. He has also learned 2 fairy skills and mastered the power of the moon. This means that the fairy energy in Togekiss' body is already full, and he should focus on training to find these skills during this period. As for the Air Slash, that is a skill that Togekiss has been training before, and now he is very proficient. The effect is also very good. Whoever is slashed will shrink. If the King's certificate is added, the effect will probably be even better. Choco Yi. Togekiss flew for a while, then rushed straight towards Chen Shi and knocked Chen Shi down. Choco Yi. Togekiss hugged Chen Shi tightly with his 2 wings, and his head couldn't stop rubbing. Okay, Togekiss, you are too big now, I am about to be crushed to death by you. Choco Yi. Togekiss flew up quickly and looked at her trainer worriedly. She was excited just now and forgot that she had evolved and her body had become bigger. It's okay, Pokus, I'm fine. Chen Shi stood up, patted the dust off his body, looked at the big plane in front of him, and felt a little excited. Pokus, finally there is a Pokus. With this size, it can carry me flying if you squeeze in. Then he laughed and said, with your size, you can't sleep in bed with me in the future. Otherwise, I'm afraid I can't squeeze you. Choco. Pokus shook his head pitifully, indicating that he still wanted to sleep in bed. Chen Shi couldn't help covering his face, he couldn't stand this guy's eyes the most. Okay, you still sleep with me. Choco. Pokus immediately put away his expression, happily flew to Yibi, and let the little sister see his new body. He also took Yibi to fly a circle in the sky. Chen Shi shook his head and said to Madame Wajia, please pay more attention to these children. Tell me if any of them are disobedient. Wah. Madame Wajia nodded slightly in agreement. Come down. Then I'll go first, you guys absorb the energy first, I'll come back to see you in the afternoon. After saying goodbye to his partner, Chen Shi walked back with the camera. He had to go cook for Professor Oak and Xiao Mao, otherwise he would only have noodles for lunch. He had to come back in the afternoon to train Pokémon, and in the evening he had to write a paper on the evolution of Pokus. Unconsciously, he became busy. Teacher, how about my paper? In the evening, Chen Shi pulled Professor Oak to see the paper he had just written. After sitting down, Professor Oak read it. Oh, it's the evolution of Pokus. It turns out that it evolves by relying on the light stone, which is a lot simpler. Well, you need to modify this paper here, you can't say that here. After that, Professor Oak pointed out a few mistakes to Chen Shi, and Chen Shi listened quietly and wrote them down carefully. Soon, under the guidance of Professor Oak, Chen Shi finished revising the paper and clicked to publish it directly. Congratulations, Xiaoxi, you have discovered another evolution of Pokémon. Can you let me see Pokus? Chen Shi rubbed his temple helplessly. Teacher, didn't I give you the energy block to awaken Marillion? Isn't one fairy type enough for you to study? Speaking of this, Professor Oak's eyes lit up and began to chatter. Xiaoxi, do you know any fairy type Pokémon? I think there are too few fairy type Pokémon with only Marillion. I have observed her awakening process and found that it is the same as you said. This inspired me a lot. I want to study other fairy Pokémon that have not awakened. Chen Shi pulled the corner of his mouth and had to tell him a few more fairy-type Pokémon. Professor Oak was immediately excited and left with the fairy energy block given by Chen Shi. And the researcher forum caused quite a stir because of his paper. But Chen Shi couldn't care less, he just went to bed and lay on Pokus's wings, then hugged Pokus. So soft. Choco. Chapter 71. The next morning, Chen Shi took Xiaoji and Xiao Mao to play by the river in the backyard. Chen Shi asked suddenly, Xiaoji, what is your dream in the future? My dream is of course to become a Pokémon master. Xiaoji said loudly. Xiao Mao glanced at him with disdain. You'd better memorize the attribute restraint table first. You want to become a Pokémon master. Xiaoji was immediately depressed when he heard this, and he couldn't refute a word. Those attribute restraint tables were like heavenly books to him, and he couldn't remember them no matter how many times he read them. Chen Shi smiled and said, then Xiaoji, you have to work hard. Without sufficient knowledge, it is difficult to become a good trainer. Well, brother Chen Shi, I remember it. Xiaoji clenched his fists and cheered himself up. Xiaomao was angry. I told you not to call me uncle brother. Why can't I call? I want to call, Xiaoji retorted. The two children started quarreling, neither of them would give in, and they were arguing until their faces turned red. Chen Shi was watching with a smile on his face, and he did not stop them. This pair of happy enemies would do this every day, and he had long been accustomed to it. After a while, the two would reconcile and chase Butterfree together. The feelings of childhood were so pure and beautiful. At this time, Professor Oak walked to his side and looked at the two children in the distance. The summer camp 1 opened is about to start. Many children will come here tomorrow. I want you to help look after them. Chen Shi was a little surprised. Professor Oak did open a summer camp, and many children were invited. Among them, Xiaoji met Serena in this summer camp. Unexpectedly, this summer camp was recently opened. Thinking of this, Chen Shi also agreed directly. No problem, teacher, it's just to protect a group of children, don't worry. Professor Oak nodded. He was still very relieved about this student. After that, Professor Oak changed the subject. Who do you think will achieve more in the future, Xiaoji or Xiaomao? Teacher, do you want to hear the truth? Of course, otherwise why would I ask you, just speak up. Xiaoji, Chen Shi replied without hesitation. Why do you think so? Professor Oak asked doubtfully. You have to know that Xiaoji can't even memorize the attribute restraint table, and Xiaomao's talent and knowledge reserves are much higher than Xiaoji. Then why do you think Xiaoji's future achievements will surpass Xiaomao? Chen Shi sighed and explained. Although Xiaoji looks a little slow and has low talent, he has a sincere heart. I saw no distractions in his eyes, only his love for Pokémon. I have always believed that the bond between trainers and Pokémon is the most incredible power in the world. If Xiaoji continues on the path of trainer, his future achievements will definitely shock everyone. Professor Oak nodded slightly and asked again, what do you think of Xiaomao? How is he? You have to listen to the truth. As if he thought of something, Professor Oak added a sentence. Chen Shi thought it was a bit funny, but still gave his answer. Xiaomao's mental quality is a bit weak, and he is a bit arrogant. He has a high talent in the road of trainer, but he is not at the top. On the contrary, his knowledge reserve is quite good. In addition, under your influence, I think he is likely to become a researcher in the future. In fact, as Chen Shi said, in the previous life animation, Xiaomao later became a researcher and became a doctor. Xiaoji kept deleting his account and traveling, and finally won the 8 Masters Championship. Professor Oak suddenly fell silent. Chen Shi continued, you've seen it yourself, haven't you? Otherwise you wouldn't ask me this question. Dr. Oak was really surprised this time. How can you be sure that I've seen it? Isn't there a possibility that I'm just asking on a whim? Chen Shi smiled slightly and sighed. No parent is willing to admit that their child is inferior to others. If they don't have talent, it's fine. But if they have talent, then parents will wishfully believe that their children are the best. Teacher, if you really think Xiaomao will achieve more in the future, you won't ask me this question, because you have already determined in your heart that Xiaomao is more powerful, so how can you care about other people's opinions? You're not the kind of person who likes to listen to flattery. Finally, Chen Shi smiled and added a sentence. Professor Oak sighed and looked at the two people chasing Butterfree in the distance. You were right, I also feel that Xiaoji will achieve greater success in the future. Xiaomao's character is indeed a little worse. I hope he can experience some hardships in his future travels. Chen Shi complained in his heart. In the future, Xiaomao will directly drive a sports car and travel with a whole team of beauties. What hardships can he experience? He is almost enjoying life. However, Chen Shi could not say this, so he had to vaguely reply with hope. Professor Oak looked into the distance. You should pay more attention to the summer camp activities tomorrow. These children are all selected by me, and then sent by their parents. Don't let any accidents happen. I will send you a copy of the summer camp activity process later, and tomorrow's security work will be handed over to you. Chen Shi nodded. As long as you don't go into the depths of the evergreen forest, there will be no problem. In fact, when Professor Oak said that the security work was handed over to him, it was only on the surface. Dragonite would definitely be watching secretly. With that perverted Dragonite around, what danger could there be? That's why he agreed so readily. Don't worry, I won't let a group of children go deep into the evergreen forest, just camping outside. That's fine. As he said that, Chen Shi shouted to the two little brats, Xiaoji, Xiaomao, come here quickly, I have something to tell you. The two were stunned when they heard it, and then ran to Chen Shi happily. Brother Chen Shi, what's the matter? Seeing that Xiaoji still called him brother, Xiaomao stared at him angrily, his eyes full of dissatisfaction. Chen Shi smiled and said, tomorrow is the summer camp activity organized by the teacher, you must not get up because you sleep in. Come early, after all, it is impolite to let others wait. The reason why Chen Shi said this is because in the previous life animation, Xiaoji slept in and was not seen at the beginning of the activity, and then a group of children were waiting for him alone. I'll remind him now, lest he does the same thing tomorrow. Xiaomao folded his arms and said disdainfully, I won't be like someone who sleeps like a dead pig all day. I will definitely arrive on time tomorrow. Xiaoji scratched his head a little embarrassedly, as if he also knew his situation. I understand, brother Chen Shi, I will definitely get up early tomorrow. The next day, Chen Shi got up early. Hurry up, Pacus, I'll give you a day off today. I'll take you to a picnic. Choco. Pacus originally wanted to stay in bed, but when he heard that they were going to have a rest today and go out for a picnic, he immediately woke up and stared at him with blinking eyes. Okay, that's all you can do. Get up quickly. Look at your little sister, how steady she is. Beside the bed, Yabe, who had just been woken up, looked confused and didn't understand what happened at all. Who am I? Where am I? How can I be steady? Choco. Pacus flew up and blinked playfully, not caring about what he said at all. Chen Shi sighed, and didn't care about Pacus who didn't grow up. He got up, changed his clothes and went to wash up. After that, Chen Shi took the two little guys downstairs and walked straight out of the Oak Research Institute. We agreed yesterday to gather at the entrance of Oak Research Institute today, so Chen Shi came directly. As expected, as soon as he arrived at the entrance, Professor Oak was already waiting there. Chen Shi hurried forward and said, hello, teacher, I'm not late yet, am I? Professor Oak waved his hand, no, I just arrived too. It's still early now, and the children haven't arrived yet. Let's wait. Okay. Chen Shi nodded, walked aside and released his companions. Because of their size, they all slept in Pokeballs when they were at Oak Research Institute. But fortunately, Chen Shi used deluxe balls, which had a large and comfortable interior, which was not bad. Then, Chen Shi took out their energy cubes and divided them up. Eat quickly, take a day off today, let's go play, and protect the children by the way. Everyone had no objection to Chen Shi's arrangement. After training for so long, it would be nice to have a good rest for a day. While Chen Shi was feeding his companions and chatting with Professor Oak, a beautiful woman with brown hair came over with a little girl with golden hair wearing a small hat. Hello, Professor Oak. I'm Saki, Serena's mother. I'm invited to bring Serena to the summer camp. Serena, say hello to Professor Oak. Serena looked a little scared and held her mother's hand tightly, but said, hello, Professor Oak, I'm Serena. Ah, hello, welcome to our summer camp. Professor Oak smiled friendly and introduced the mother and daughter. This is Chen Shi, my student, and the security staff of this summer camp. Chen Shi smiled and said, hello, Ms. Saki, and the lovely Serena, I'm glad to meet you. While saying hello, he also observed Serena for a while without any expression, the fragile and strong girl who gave up her dream for Xiaoji. She still looks like a cute little girl now. Saki also said politely, hello Mr. Chen Shi, I'm going to trouble you for the safety of the child. Hello brother Chen Shi, Serena said softly, but her eyes were always looking at Pacus. Obviously, the little girl likes Pacus very much. Chen Shi smiled and waved his hand, it's not a big deal. This is my job. Please rest assured, Ms. Saki. There are still many children who haven't arrived yet. Please wait for a while. No problem. Saki nodded slightly and took Serena to Professor Oak. Chen Shi took another look and found that Serena's eyes were still fixed on Pacus, full of curiosity. Chen Shi smiled and whispered, Pacus, have you finished eating? Go and play with the little girl after you finish eating. Pacus burped, glanced at Serena, and happily accepted the task. Choco. Pacus flew directly to Serena and called softly. Serena was a little scared at first, but soon put down her fear and was amused by Pokus. She boldly stretched out her little hand to touch the strange Pokémon in front of her. Unexpectedly, Pokus came up directly, which scared Serena, and then she boldly reached out and touched it. Choco. Pokus happily rubbed the little girl, which made Serena very happy. Then she mustered up the courage to hug Pokus with a smile on her face. The entrance of the Oak Research Institute was suddenly filled with the laughter of children and Pokémon. The three adults just watched and did not disturb them. After a while, Chen-Shi sighed. This is the first time that Pokus likes someone so much. It seems that this is a kind girl. That's true. Dadr. Wood nodded in agreement. To be recognized by Pokus, this little girl must be very kind-hearted. Saki smiled gently and didn't say much. Just then, a little boy's shout came. Wow, there are so many Pokémon. They all look so powerful. A black-haired boy ran to Chen-Shi excitedly and looked at Doranbaruto and the others. Big brother, are these all your Pokémon? Chen-Shi looked at him carefully, and then realized that this should be Xiaohao, the Superman. Yes, these are my Pokémon. What's your name? Xiaohao's eyes lit up. Big brother, you must be a powerful trainer. My name is Xiaohao, I'm here to participate in Professor Oak's summer camp. Chen-Shi smiled and said, nice to meet you, I'm the security guard of this summer camp, my name is Chen-Shi. Big brother, how did you capture them? They look so powerful. I want to capture such powerful Pokémon in the future. Xiaohao asked excitedly. Chen-Shi's mouth twitched, and then he answered seriously, you need to be sincere to capture Pokémon. When I captured them, they were still very weak, and some of them couldn't even beat Caterpillar. A good trainer should help his Pokémon become stronger step by step, instead of having to capture those powerful Pokémon. As soon as these words came out, Swampert and the others looked at Dragonite in the air, their eyes full of teasing. Among them, only Duolong has the honor of being unable to beat the Caterpillar. Duolong Baruto's narrow eyes twitched slightly, and he turned his head away without wanting to speak. It's been so long, and I've evolved to this point, why are you still picking on the Caterpillar? Xiaohao nodded thoughtfully, not knowing whether he had listened or not. But it's none of Chen-Shi's business. It's best if he can listen, but forget it if he can't. It's because Xiaohao is still a child, so Chen-Shi would remind him. If he had grown up now, Chen-Shi would have to put him in a sack. Not for any reason, just because Xiaohao is really annoying. Otherwise, where would the title of One-Ball Superman come from? Grandpa, Uncle, I'm here. Just as everyone was waiting, a brown-haired child rushed out of the Oak Research Institute, shouting happily. Who else could it be but Xiaomao? Dr. Oak sighed. Xiaomao, don't be so reckless. This is Serena and Xiaohao. You can get to know each other. You will all be partners who will participate in the activities together later. Yeah, Xiaomao nodded and said to the two. Hello, I'm Xiaomao, nice to meet you. Xiaohao and Serena also responded in time. The three children didn't have so many thoughts and immediately gathered together to chat. Slowly, time passed by, and more parents brought their children here to gather. It was almost 8 o'clock when the summer camp started, but Xiaoji hadn't come yet. Chen-Shi couldn't help but smile bitterly. He reminded Xiaoji not to be late yesterday, but he didn't expect that he didn't listen at all. It's time to start, and no one has come yet. Dr. Oak looked at the time and rubbed his temples. It would definitely not be a good idea to let so many people wait for Xiaoji alone, so Professor Oak decided not to wait any longer. Okay, we won't wait for that kid anymore, let's first. Wait a minute, there's me, Professor Oak. Just before Professor Oak finished speaking, he was interrupted by an urgent shout. In the distance, a young man with a messy hair and a backpack was running fast while waving his hands. Who else could this person be other than Xiaoji? After all, he was a man who was late even for receiving the initial Pokémon, so it was normal for him to be late for the summer camp. Xiaoji just ran over, with his hands on his knees and breathing heavily. It was obvious that he was very tired from running over just now. Xiaomao immediately mocked. My uncle reminded you so much yesterday, but you were still late. You are such a lazy sleeper. And you made so many of us wait for you. Xiaoji lowered his head, his face flushed. Sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Professor Oak was helpless. Xiaoji was like this. He couldn't say much, so he could only remind him, "Come here quickly, we are going to Viridian Forest." Yeah, Xiaoji nodded excitedly and ran directly to Xiaomao. Serena on the side smiled at him friendly. Xiaoji felt embarrassed. He scratched his head and grinned. Chen Shi, who was behind, looked at this scene with a slight smile on his face. What a group of cute children. Along the way, Professor Oak patiently explained various knowledge to the children and taught them to have a correct understanding of Pokémon. The children were also very enthusiastic, always asking questions one after another, and Professor Oak would answer them patiently. Among them, Xiao Hao was the most jumpy, always asking some confusing questions. Soon, the group entered the periphery of the evergreen forest, and occasionally saw a few green caterpillars on the surrounding trees. I don't know why, but Dragon Baludo looked at these green caterpillars with a bit of unkindness, as if he wanted to go up and fight with them. But there are so many people around, and there are also his own partners and trainers. If I am seen bullying the green caterpillars, then how can I save my face? In the end, Dragon Baludo still restrained this impulse and followed Chen Shi without saying a word. As they passed by, a green caterpillar on the tree next to him tilted his head and looked at Chen Shi curiously, with a humanized doubt in his eyes. Seeing him leave, the green caterpillar jumped up and turned into a Pidgeot again, flying into the sky and continuing to follow them. When they reached an open area by the river, Professor Oak stopped and said to the children, "Let's set up camp here. Parents are not allowed to help, they can only guide from the side." The reason why parents are not allowed to help is to teach children survival knowledge in the wild, so the parents of these children have no objection. Great, I must be the first one to set up the tent. Xiao Hao shouted happily, took the space backpack from his mother, and quickly took things out. Humph, I will be the first one to set up the tent. Xiao Mao snorted coldly, put down his backpack and started to set up the tent, and Professor Oak was also teaching on the side. The other children were not to be outdone, and they also took the space backpack from their parents and started to act. Chen Shi found a big tree, sat under it and looked at the group of children, and his eyes occasionally glanced around to avoid a crazy Pokémon suddenly rushing out. He still remembered that he was a security guard, orb dedicated. "Li Tiao," Swampert yelled, and then pointed to the stream. Chen Shi understood what he meant. "You go, remember not to make too much noise." "Li Tiao," Swampert nodded, then ran directly into the river and disappeared in an instant. Pacus ran to help Serena set up the tent, and Mrs. Waji also ran to help Xiaoji. Like Dragon Ball, Charizard, Leafeon and Metagross have been staying by his side, resting or basking in the sun. Chen Shi also lazily leaned under the tree, enjoying the only holiday during this period. Suddenly, he noticed that there was a line of sight observing him. Chen Shi opened his eyes and saw a clean green caterpillar on the tree looking at him curiously. Why do I say clean? Because the wild green caterpillars living in the forest are more or less dirty, or have scars on their bodies. But this green caterpillar was fat, and it looked like it had a good diet. Moreover, its body was too clean, and there was no scar at all. Chen Shi became interested, stood up, and took out a universal energy block and handed it to the green caterpillar. "Eat it, little guy, it's delicious." On the side, Duolong Barudo snorted, really wanting to give this insect a shadow ball. The green caterpillar tilted its head, glanced at Duolong Barudo, and then took a bite of the energy block. The next moment, the green caterpillar's eyes lit up immediately, and it ate it clean in 2 or 3 bites. Then it squeaked at Chen Shi, looking at him with its big watery eyes. Obviously, the green caterpillar meant that he wanted to eat more. Chen Shi's mouth twitched, and he cursed inwardly, "What a hell, I actually saw cuteness in a green caterpillar. Also, isn't this green caterpillar a little too smart? It has such a rich expression, and it's so cute." The next moment, Chen Shi was defeated again, and he took out the energy cube again and handed it to the caterpillar. What he couldn't stand the most was that the Pokémon looked at him like this. After that, Chen Shi had a thought and wanted to see the data of this caterpillar. But when he saw the content on the panel, Chen Shi's heart suddenly stopped, his face turned pale instantly, and the strength of his whole body seemed to be taken away at once, standing still. Emotions kept flashing in his eyes: shock, fear, surprise, speechlessness, and helplessness. Because what appeared in front of him was Pokémon Mew. Level, qualification, features, synchronization. Gender, none. Skills, the best slicker in the Pokémon world. Mew. Mew, as a mythical beast in the Pokémon world, is still very cool. Not only does it have the genes of all Pokémon in its body, it can learn all the moves, and it also has a symbiotic relationship with the World Tree. Team Rocket even used one of its fallen eyelashes to create a first-level god, the famous counterattack brother, Mewtwo. As for why Mew appeared here, Chen Shi didn't know, but according to Mew's temperament, it is possible to appear anywhere. After all, this guy is known as the #1 sly guy in the Pokémon world. It's normal to appear here. But why did you appear in front of me? And what's the matter with that bunch of question marks? I'm really. Chen Shi kept cursing in his heart, but he forced a smile on his face. Boss, is it delicious? I still have a lot. Chen Shi took out the universal energy cubes in his bag and piled them under the tree into a small hill. He usually doesn't prepare many of these energy cubes. After all, his partners all eat energy cubes customized by their grandmothers, and there are not many universal ones. On the other side, Boruto opened his eyes, a little confused. When did his trainer become so polite to a caterpillar? He knew that because the man and the dragon, who were defeated at their debut and lost face, didn't really like the caterpillar. But now Xiaoxi's eyes are full of flattery. What's the situation? Boruto looked at the caterpillar carefully again, and didn't find anything unusual, so he closed his eyes again. Anyway, it's just a caterpillar, so what? And Dream was not polite, jumping down from the tree in the form of a caterpillar, eating it piece by piece. Chen Shi didn't dare to leave, for fear of angering this little ancestor. There are still a group of children over there. What if this guy gets angry and uses some skills on you? Who can withstand it? Even if Professor Oak's Dragonite came, it would not work. The people who were concentrating on setting up the tent over there did not pay attention to this side, so naturally they did not notice his strange behavior. After a while, all the energy cubes fell into Mengwan's stomach. It looked at Chen Shi with satisfaction. Your superpower is extremely powerful. Closing square bracket. Chen Shi was startled and quickly turned around to look around. Seeing that there was no one around, he thought of Mengwan in front of him. He asked cautiously, "Were you talking just now?" He remembered that many mythical beasts could sense telepathy, and it was not hard to believe that a fantasy beast like Mengwan could do this. "Yes, human, you seem to recognize me." Chen Shi showed a smile that was uglier than crying. "Then should I not recognize you? I can leave now, and I can take those people away." Chen Shi was scared very quickly. After all, the one in front of him was a big guy whose level could not even be seen on the system panel. He had to be scared. What if he had a brain that was wrong and wanted to attack? Mengwan tilted his head. "Your superpower is extremely powerful and special. I want your help." Chen Shi was about to cry. What superpower is powerful? Can't he just move a cup and have telepathy? This is far inferior to Nancy and Catalia. Okay. They are all human-shaped Pokémon. Can you go find them instead of me? But he only dared to say this in his heart, and asked cautiously, "My superpower should be very weak, right? And do you need my help with anything else? If so, you can tell me. If I can do it, I will definitely not refuse." Mengwan looked at him strangely. "Your superpowers are not even the tip of the iceberg now, but they are special." Chen Shi also became bolder and asked, "Why is it special?" Mengwan tilted his head, as if thinking. After a while, the voice in his heart sounded again. "It's not like a superpower, but more like a kind of spiritual power. This power is quite special. I have only seen humans with the same power as you more than 1,000 years ago." Chen Shi's face darkened slightly. It seems that his superpower is not as simple as he imagined. Because it is not very powerful and there is no special training method, Chen Shi actually forgets that he has superpowers many times. After all, this thing can only move a cup, and it is useless. As for telepathy, he didn't fight much before. He rarely used it, so he subconsciously ignored the fact that he still had superpowers. But now Mengwan ran over to tell him that your superpower is not simple, it is a kind of spiritual power. But what is spiritual power? Hey, I don't understand it either. After a while, Chen Shi collected his thoughts and asked softly, "What do you need my help with?" "I don't know." Wanwan turned into a Bobo again, flew to Chen Shi's shoulder and landed. This scene happened to be seen by Duolong Baruto, who stretched out his claws and rubbed his eyes in disbelief. It was clearly a green caterpillar just now, how did it become a bobo? Chen Shi noticed Duolong's movements and gave the latter a reassuring look. Duolong then lay down again, but his eyes were still fixed on the bobo on Chen Shi's shoulder. If he wanted to do it, I'm afraid Duolong Baruto would attack immediately. Wanwan glanced at Duolong again, but didn't pay attention to his gaze. I just feel that the world tree and I will be in danger soon, so I need your help. Closing square bracket. Chen Shi's mouth twitched, and he really wanted to slap this guy to death. What do you mean by feeling? You don't even know whether this feeling is reliable, and you want to ask someone for help. But after thinking about it carefully, Chen Shi also understood. The divine beasts in this world are very high class and too strong. As a super-powered fantasy beast, fantasy must be able to predict the future. It must be that he predicted something before he said that. But he still asked, don't you have a specific time? I can't always be with you, or wait at the world tree, right? I have my own things to do. It doesn't matter, I can give you a key. As long as you crush it when I need help, you can get there quickly. Closing square bracket. After saying that, Fantasy took out a white finger-sized crystal from somewhere and gave it to Chen Shi. After taking it, Chen Shi forced a smile on his face. You think it's quite thoughtful, huh? But why should I help you? What's the benefit of helping you? At this point, Chen Shi actually agreed, because this is related to the world tree, and it is really not sloppy. If there is a problem with the world tree, I'm afraid the real world will not be much better. Anyway, I already owed a favor to the god-sending volcano and the meteor people, so it doesn't matter if I owe another one. But the benefits are still there. It's nothing more than helping them in the future. If I can help Chen Shi, I will help. If I can't help, I will find a way to help. If there is really no way, I will ask for help. After all, there is a good teacher now, and I have to take advantage of him. Thinking of this, Chen Shi glanced at Dr. Oak, who was still teaching the children to set up a tent. But when Chen Shi mentioned asking for benefits, Wanwan was a little dumbfounded, and looked at him with an expression of how could you do that? This is to help Lord Wanwan and the world tree, and you are still thinking about benefits. Chen Shi saw this look and immediately stuffed the white crystal in his hand back to it. Then you should ask for help from someone else. After saying that, Chen Shi ignored the Wanwan on his shoulder and lay down with his eyes narrowed. In his heart, he couldn't stop complaining, I really did a big sin, and I was also a jerk, running to feed you some energy cubes. You said that you ate so much of my food, and I'm not someone who needs these little things, so I won't bother with you, okay? But you want me to help you, but you are not willing to give me any benefits, who will work for you. You really want the horse to run without giving it grass to eat, so don't call it Wanwan, just call it a capitalist. Your heart is black, it's nothing, bah. On the other side, Professor Oak suddenly felt something and looked at Chen Shi. He saw that the latter was fine and was still playing with a bobo. He continued to teach the children and explain various knowledge. Back to Dream, it was also a little confused. The human who mastered the power of the mind was obviously very righteous. When he said there was a difficulty, he would pat his chest and do it. Why is this one not okay now? He even asked for benefits from me. Shouldn't you ask me enthusiastically where the difficulty is and then find a way to help? This script is wrong. However, when he saw that the human in front of him seemed to be really not going to care, Dream still gritted his teeth and moved forward. Whatever you want, as long as Master Wanwan can give it, I will give it to you. Chen Shi opened his eyes full of smiles. What do you think I need? I believe Master Wanwan will not give you something too useless, right? Chen Shi kicked the ball back. He didn't know what Wanwan had, and Wanwan said that as long as it could give it. How could he know what could be given and what couldn't be given? Besides, Chen Shi had never seen any good things, and he was also a bumpkin. As long as these words were said and Wanwan was put on the shelf, I believe that this black-hearted cat would not give anything cheap. Wanwan looked at Chen Shi hesitantly, not knowing what to give. It has collected a lot of things over the years, and there are also many good things. These are useless to it, but they should be very useful to the human partner in front of it. But it doesn't know if Chen Shi will like it. What if he doesn't like it and doesn't help? Wanwan gritted his teeth and took out a small piece of colorful fragment from somewhere. This is it. I picked it up with great difficulty that year. As soon as he said this, Chen Shi immediately scanned the fragment. A small piece of Xerneas contains pure life force and fairy essence. Chen Shi looked at the fingernail-sized fragment and drooled. I agreed to this matter. Lord Mengwan is really generous. I admire him. The next second, Chen Shi snatched the fragment with lightning speed, and then found a box from his backpack and closed it. The next second, Chen Shi looked back for some reason and saw Madame Hua Jia looking at this side with a fiery look. Chen Shi sighed and nodded to Madame Hua Jia. The latter understood and showed a smile like a flower on her face. She seemed to be a flower. But no matter what, Madame Hua Jia knew that the trainer would leave that thing for her. Chen Shi retracted his gaze, his heart surging. In his team, Dragonite actually didn't look like a big brother, and Swampert didn't need to be mentioned. He just scratched his head and ate all day. There was no need to mention the following Pacus and Leafeon. Charizard and Metagross were both battle maniacs. It was Mrs. Hua Jia who took on the heavy responsibility in the team. She had been taking care of other Pokémon, handling various chores outside, and always working hard as the big sister in the team. But her talent and potential were really not good. Chen Shi had always hoped that there was a way to help her improve. Now the opportunity came, and this Xerneas corner would definitely be given to her, no doubt about it. Seeing her fiery eyes just now, Chen Shi also understood that she was not as heartless as Leafeon but also a strong girl. Seeing the companions behind catching up, she was also a little anxious. Then hold this. If something happens, this crystal will turn red. Then you can crush it and go to the secret realm of the World Tree. Okay, I understand. Mew nodded with satisfaction, then turned into an Eevee and jumped onto Chen Shi's shooter. Have you finished talking? Mengwan looked at him strangely. I've finished talking. Then why don't you leave? Why are you following me? Chen Shi glared at it and said unhappily. Mengwan straightened his chest and said confidently. I finally came out once, what's wrong with playing? Besides, what if you break the contract? I have to keep an eye on you. Chen Shi looked at Mengwan in silence. After a long while, the latter suddenly felt guilty and turned his head away slightly. Chen Shi was really speechless now. He was afraid that I would break the contract. This black-hearted cat just wanted to stay by my side and eat and drink for free. You are worthy of being the #1 slicker in the Pokémon world. You are a mythical beast after all, and you don't care about your face at all. Can you learn from the flying and pufferfish? You know you can't beat them after Rayquaza comes, but you still have to fight for face. This cat is called a divine beast. But Chen Shi couldn't really chase it away. If it wanted to follow him, let it follow. Anyway, it was just a little extra food, nothing. Then he thought of something and asked, where did you pick up that Xerneas horn? Chen Shi was indeed quite curious about this. After all, this thing, how could it be so easy to pick up? Dream tilted his head with a proud expression. For more than 3,000 years, Xerneas and Yveltal had been fighting fiercely, but the one who could stop them didn't show up, causing the two to be seriously injured and fall into a deep sleep. I picked it up while watching the excitement. Chen Shi couldn't help but cover his face. God, I picked it up while watching the excitement. You picked it up while watching, right? They were fighting to death, and you followed them and picked up the pieces of their bodies, right? You really are a black-hearted cat. God X and God Y would probably kill you if they knew. But, does this have anything to do with the dormancy of fairy energy? Chen Shi touched his chin and thought. He always felt that it would not be so simple. After all, the evil energy did not disappear. It is true that God X and God Y are naturally opposed, but they are also evenly matched. Chen Shi does not believe that God Y will be much better if God X is seriously injured and sleeping. Besides, the mythical beasts in this world are very high class, but not to this extent, right? Will Xerneas' sleep really cause the fairy energy to disappear? If there is a problem with the fairy-type slate, and then the fairy-type energy disappears, Chen Shi still believes that it is because Xerneas' sleep caused the fairy energy to disappear, which sounds so sloppy. After thinking for a long time, he still couldn't figure it out, so Chen Shi simply stopped thinking about it and leaned against the tree with his eyes squinted. He kept massaging Dream in his hand. Okay, kids, that's all for this morning. You can prepare to eat. We will go to the forest to observe Pokémon up close in the afternoon," Professor Oak said loudly, and the children immediately ran back to their parents and ate the food they had prepared in advance. The group of children looked particularly interesting, and they knew to share their dishes with their friends next to them. The atmosphere was joyful and harmonious. Chen Shi sighed sadly and waved back to Madame Wajia and Pacus. Pacus was so excited that he was already familiar with Serena. He had flown with Serena before, making the little girl laugh. And Swampert came back as early as noon. This guy never needed anyone to call him to eat. Chen Shi pulled over his backpack, took out their energy cubes, and distributed them one by one. Mew, who turned into Eevee, was immediately excited. He ran over to smell each Pokémon energy cube, and finally chose Pacus's energy cube. Because Pacus's energy cube is sweet, it seems that Mengwan also likes sweet food. "Don't go and grab Pacus's, I have some here, I'll get it for you." Mengwan's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly ran to sit in front of Chen Shi, looking expectant. Chen Shi rubbed his temples and took out another Pacus energy cube for him. Really don't want the demeanor of a master at all. Mengwan also accepted everything and ate it bite by bite. Professor Oak came over at this time and looked at Eevee in surprise. "You actually met an Eevee. This kind of Pokémon is not very common here. Are you going to capture it?" He saw this student playing with a Pidgeot before, and now there is another Eevee. But he didn't think much about it. It is normal to meet Pokémon in the Evergreen Forest. Both Pidgeot and Eevee exist. There are even quasi-god Pokémon in the deepest part of the forest. But there are champion-level Pokémon, too. It depends on whether you dare to go in and capture them. Chen Shi smiled bitterly. "Just take it as it is. Anyway, I plan to take care of it for the time being." The main reason is that this matter is more magical, and it is difficult for him to explain. "You can't say that this Eevee is Mew, right? If you say it, I'm afraid that Oak will put down the summer camp activities directly, and then directly put a magnifying glass on Mew's face and study it carefully. Just know this, I will take the children to contact wild Pokémon in the afternoon. You have to pay attention at that time, don't let me down." "Don't worry, teacher." Chen Shi nodded slightly. "When I contact them, I will let Metagross's telekinesis lock them, and nothing will happen." "Is it right, Metagross?" Metagross called out steadily. In fact, it is not very willing to take care of these children. It is better to train at home or challenge powerful Pokémon with this time. But since it was the trainer who gave the order, Metagross was willing to obey. Professor Oak smiled and said, "That puts my mind at ease." What he was worried about was that when children came into close contact with Pokémon, they would be unstable. If they angered Pokémon, something bad might happen. Now that Metagross was here, he could put down his only worry. As for the powerful Pokémon in the forest, Professor Oak was not worried at all. His old friends were also watching them, so nothing could go wrong. On the other side, the children were eating and chatting, and somehow they talked about Chen Shi. "Who is that over there? He looks so powerful." "I don't know. It seems to be the security guard who is responsible for protecting us this time." "Tisk, I thought it was some powerful trainer, but it turned out to be a security guard." "Shut up, I don't allow you to say that about my brother Chen Shi." Xiaoji glared at the little boy who said Chen Shi was a security guard. The little boy was startled at first, but when he reacted, he immediately became angry and said loudly with a red face. "I said what's wrong with him? Am I wrong? He's just a security guard, a stinky security guard." The middle-aged man next to him didn't stop him, and looked at Xiaoji with interest, wanting to see how this child without parents would respond. But before Xiaoji could speak, Xiaomao on the other side spoke up. "You ignorant fool, my uncle is the youngest intermediate breeder in the Alliance, my grandfather's student, and now he is a senior researcher, not a stinky security guard." The middle-aged man next to the child changed his face and suddenly grabbed the little boy who wanted to speak. He knew that the child in front of him, Xiaomao, was the grandson of Professor Oak. He called the young man uncle, so wasn't he Professor Oak's student? And what about the youngest intermediate breeder in the Alliance, a senior researcher? Although it sounds incredible, the middle-aged man does not intend to offend, so he stopped his son from talking. At this time, the mother of Selena on the other side, that is, Saki, suddenly realized, I remember that Chen Shi is the 14-year-old intermediate breeder in the Alliance. At first I thought it was the same name, but I didn't expect it to be him. Many parents around heard this guy, and they all stared at the young man over there in disbelief. What? A 14-year-old intermediate breeder? This is impossible. How can there be such a young intermediate breeder? I don't believe it anyway. I also remember that there is indeed a breeder genius named Chen Shi, who caused a great sensation in the past 2 years. I didn't expect that he is also a senior researcher and was accepted as a student by Dr. Oak. Now that you mention it, I also remember that there is such a person. Yes, I have heard of this name too. Hearing the whispers around, the middle-aged man was startled and hurriedly warned his son in a low voice not to talk nonsense, so as not to offend the promising young man. Xiao Mao also pulled Xiaoji, who was still trying to compete, stuffed him with a big mouthful of rice, and blocked his mouth. Xiaoji was also heartless, and soon forgot about it, and continued to immerse himself in the delicious food with Xiao Mao. However, after such an interruption, the atmosphere around was completely destroyed, and everyone ate quietly, without the harmony just now. In the distance, Chen Shi, who was unaware of this, was still chatting with Professor Oak. Professor Oak saw that everyone over there was silent, and was a little puzzled. I just left for a while, why do I feel that everyone is not chatting as before? I don't know, maybe I don't want to disturb others' meal. Professor Oak pointed to a 50-centimeter long, yellow-colored bug with a white horn on its head and said, its scientific name is the hornworm, and its final evolution is the terrifying giant bee in the forest. Remember, when you go out to travel in the future, don't provoke this kind of Pokémon unless you have to, because the giant bee may not be strong alone, but they usually stay in groups and are one of the most dangerous Pokémon in the forest. If you provoke them, remember to run to a river. After you dive into the water, they will give up chasing you. A group of children immediately surrounded the hornworm and chattered around it. Wow, this is the unicorn beetle. I haven't seen it in our area. Yes, its horn looks so scary. Is it poisonous? It's okay, I'm from the Kanto region. This kind of Pokémon is very weak. As long as you don't take the initiative to provoke it, it won't attack you. That's right, I've seen it many times when I went out to play before. It's okay. Some brave boys have stretched out their hands and touched the unicorn beetle. Seeing that the unicorn beetle didn't react, the others became bolder and stepped forward to touch the unicorn beetle. The unicorn beetle opened his innocent eyes and secretly glanced at the giant gold monster in the sky. He felt a superpower tightly locked on him. If he dared to move, he would probably become a unicorn beetle sauce in the next moment. At this time, his heart was broken, and he could only let these human cubs touch him motionlessly. Life is not easy, Chongchong sighed. In the sky, Chen Shi stood solemnly on the head of Metagross, always paying attention to the movements around him. But he was secretly happy in his heart, because he finally enjoyed the treatment of Daigo. It was a bit cool. The achievement of standing on the shining Metagross, achieved. It was the Eevee on his shoulder, that is, the Mew, that spoiled the scenery. It couldn't score its own goal, and it didn't want to leave, so it decided to rely on Chen Shi. Chen Shi had no choice but to support this little ancestor first. At this time, several children suddenly left secretly, including Xiaoji and Xiaohao. Serena, the good child, also slowly left the team. She was different from the other two, and she should have been lost. At this time, their parents were not around, and Professor Oak also asked parents not to follow them in the afternoon class. Because they were afraid that they would worry about their children and not let them contact Pokémon, they made such an arrangement. But it made these little brats bolder, and they dared to leave the team and explore the evergreen forest alone. Chen Shi summoned Dragonite, Charizard and Pokus. Go and protect the children who left secretly, don't let them find you. Pokus, go find Serena, don't let her get into any accidents. Barua, Roar, Choco. The three Pokémon nodded in agreement, and flew away in different directions the next moment. Dragonite went to protect Xiaoji, Charizard followed Xiaohao, and Pokus went to find Serena. Where are you? Why are you gone? Serena looked at the empty forest in panic, and her heart became more and more scared. Everyone, Serena shouted, but no one responded. At this moment, there was a noise from the bushes next to her. Serena's fear reached its peak and she ran back quickly. But she was tripped by the stone under her feet and fell heavily to the ground, leaving a wound on her knee. A mosquito coil tadpole suddenly jumped out of the bushes that made the movement and ran away. Yo, yo, looking at the mosquito coil tadpole running away, Serena sobbed in fear. Mom, suddenly, another strange noise came from the bushes, and Serena was even more scared, with tears falling down. Mosquito coil tadpole, but this time it was not Pokémon that came. A head popped out of the bushes. It was Xiaoji who came here chasing the mosquito coil tadpole. Xiaoji also found Serena on the ground and asked in confusion, "What are you doing here?" "My name is Xiaoji, what about you? What's wrong with you?" Selena was stunned for a moment, and when she saw that it was her partner who came to the summer camp together, she immediately said aggrievedly, "My leg is injured. Don't worry about this situation." Seeing this, Xiaoji took out a silk scarf from his pocket and carefully bandaged Serena. "Hurry up and stand up, I'll take you back to find the big Professor Wood." Serena tried to stand up after hearing this, but it hurt her wound and she fell to the ground again. "It hurts so much, I can't stand up," Xiaoji encouraged. "Don't give up until the last moment." As he said that, Xiaoji stretched out his hand, pulled Serena up, and hugged her in his arms. In the sky, Pacus blinked speechlessly and flew down immediately. Choco ee, Pacus. Serena looked at the big white bird in front of her with surprise. Choco ee. Pacus smiled mischievously, flew in front of Serena, stretched out his wings to condense a small drop of life water, and merged into Serena's knee. "It's amazing, I don't feel any pain anymore." Serena touched her knee. "Thank you, Pacus." Quote. Choco. Pacus shook his head, saying "You're welcome," and then turned his back to Serena, motioning her to come up. Serena laughed so hard that she threw herself on Pacus, and then Pacus took her up and flew away. Ash looked at the man and the bird going away, and stood there in a daze. Who am I? Where am I? What am I going to do? The next moment, a dragon ball appeared next to Ash, stretched out its claws to grab him, and flew with him. "It's Dragon Ball," Ash said with a grin. Dragon Ball glanced at him and said nothing. Not far away, Professor Oak was so anxious when he saw that the three children were missing. Immediately asked Chen Shi, who had just come down, "Xiao Shi, did you see the three children? How come they disappeared in the blink of an eye?" Quote. Chen Shi spread his hands, "He ran away by himself. Don't worry, I asked Dragonite, Charizard and Togekiss to follow him, nothing will happen." Hearing this, Professor Oak breathed a sigh of relief, as long as the child was not lost. Otherwise, if the child was lost during his summer camp activities, he really didn't know how to face the parents. Soon, when Professor Oak continued to introduce Pokémon to the children, Serena was brought back to the team by Pacus, and Xiaoji was also brought back by Dragon Ball. Professor Oak said with a stern face, "You must stay close to the team and don't leave alone. It is very dangerous in the evergreen forest. What if something unexpected happens?" Serena blushed and lowered her head, but Xiaoji was smiling. "Professor Oak, I'm fine, you don't have to worry. I have Brother Chen Shi's Dragon Ball to protect me." Just when Professor Oak was about to scold Xiaoji, a Charizard fell from the sky and interrupted him. The Charizard was holding a embarrassed Xiaohao in his arms. Professor Oak immediately stepped forward to check and found that Xiaohao was just a little embarrassed and not hurt, so he was relieved. Chen Shi stepped forward. "Charizard, what happened to this child?" Charizard glanced at Xiaohao, and then roared to explain. As Chen Shi listened, he looked at Xiaohao with more and more strange eyes. "You kid actually dared to provoke a group of giant horn bees, you were really brave. I remember that Professor Oak said before not to provoke a group of giant horn bees." Xiaohao's face immediately turned red, and he lowered his head and twisted his body without saying anything. In fact, he didn't take the weak Pokémon like the hornet bug seriously at all. Who knew that after beating a hornet bug, so many giant horn bees would run out? He was afraid that he would never forget the experience of being chased by giant horn bees today. If it weren't for a Charizard that saved him at the last moment, he would be in real danger today. Professor Oak was also a little speechless. He had just said not to provoke giant horn bees, but he didn't expect that the kid would sneak out and provoke giant horn bees. He deserved to be so embarrassed. Then, Professor Oak sighed, "Remember this lesson, don't be so reckless in the future." In the wild, danger is everywhere, do you understand? I understand, Xiao Hao replied in a low voice, not as lively as before, perhaps he was really scared. And you too. Professor Oak turned to Xiaoji and Serena and said, you should also follow the team closely and stop running around. Xiaoji and Serena nodded and agreed. Dream sat on Chen Shi's shoulder and yawned boredly, still thinking about when to have dinner. That cube is really the most delicious food it has ever eaten. Soon, it was evening, and Professor Oak returned to the camp with a group of excited children. The parents of the children here have packed their things, and they are relieved to see that their children have returned safely. Everyone, today's summer camp activities are over, let's go back to Pallet Town now. Dr. Oak said loudly. All the parents took their children and followed Professor Oak back to Pallet Town. After arriving in the town, everyone said goodbye to Professor Oak and left with their children. Before leaving, Serena waved to Pacus, goodbye, Pacus. Choco. Pacus smiled and waved his wings. Serena was a little reluctant, then took a deep look at Xiaoji, and left with Saki. Xiaoji, that girl seems to have a good impression of you. Chen Shi smiled. Xiaoji scratched his head, is that so? Xiaomao glanced at him and turned back to the research institute. Xiaoji shook his head, never mind, brother Chen Shi, and Professor Oak, I'm going home for dinner, I'm leaving first. The two smiled and nodded, watching Xiaoji leave. The next morning, Chen Shi packed his luggage and found Professor Oak. Teacher, I'm going home. Thank you so much for your time. I have to catch a plane this morning, so I'm here to tell you. Dr. Oak was stunned, feeling a little reluctant, but still said with a smile, okay, I wish you a safe journey. Then he remembered something and hurriedly said, can you leave me a little more of your fairy energy cube? I still need to study it. Chen Shi shook his head and took out a piece of paper and 2 stones. This is the formula and production steps of the fairy energy cube. These 2 stones are the keystone and the super evolution stone of the marsupial. I'll give them to you. Of course, you will feel uncomfortable with the first super evolution, so you have to pay attention. Also, I think the super evolution of the marsupial may be a little different, because she is carrying a child after all, and she may be able to give you some surprises at that time. Dr. Oak took it silently. After passing these things, he was not polite to his students. Then see you at the World Championships. I will go to watch your game then. Okay. Chen Shi smiled and waved his hand, striding out. But as soon as I walked out of the door of the institute, I was hugged by Xiaomao who rushed out from behind. Uncle Master, are you leaving? Xiaomao looked up and looked eagerly. He really couldn't bear to leave his uncle. Because the uncle not only played with him, but also often took care of him. The most important thing was that if the uncle left, no one would cook for him, and his grandfather would only make instant noodles for him. Who could stand this? Chen Shi naturally didn't know what Xiaomao was thinking, but he also understood that he couldn't bear to leave him. Then he reached out and rubbed Xiaomao's head, all separations are for a better meeting. I have my own things and goals, so I won't stop. You will also experience these when you grow up, so don't be sad or reluctant. I hope that when we meet next time, you can make greater progress, establish your own goals, and then work towards them like me. Xiaomao didn't understand what these words meant, but he remembered them all in his heart, then he let go of Chen Shi and nodded heavily. I remember Uncle Shi. Goodbye, I will also go to watch your game when the World Championships start. Uncle Shi, you have to do your best too. Chen Shi smiled and nodded, waved his hand, and said goodbye to Xiaomao. The boy walked towards the distance step by step in the morning light. His figure looked particularly slender in the golden sunlight, as if he had merged with the light. Xiaomao stared at this scene blankly. He felt that Uncle Shi was not walking out of Junxin town, but walking towards a grand stage. In the evening, Chen Shi rode on Dragon Baruto and returned to his farm. Dragon Baruto is now very big, so it is no problem to fly with him. He doesn't have to be as embarrassed as before, and he can't even find a flying mount, and he has to ride Armored Bird with Daigo. In addition to Dragon Baruto, Charizard and Metagross can also take him flying easily. As for why he didn't ride Metagross, Chen Shi said that it was handsome, but not as fast as Dragon Baruto. Back to the door of the villa, Chen Shi pushed the door open and walked in. Grandpa and Grandma were eating, and seeing her grandson coming back, Grandma Chen was immediately excited. Little boy, you're back, come and sit. Chen Shi smiled and sat next to Grandma Chen, and Gardevoir immediately brought him a set of bowls and chopsticks. Grandma Chen continued, you are such a jerk. You always come back suddenly, and Grandma doesn't cook anything delicious. Next time, you should call home in advance so that Grandma can prepare something. Prepare for what? Chen Shi waved his hand, there's nothing to prepare. I'm just going home. There's no need to make such a fuss. You don't have to work hard either. Chen Shi said as he picked up a piece of food with chopsticks and stuffed it into his mouth. Grandma's cooking is still delicious. If it tastes good, eat more. If it's not enough, Grandma will make it for you. Grandma Chen smiled and looked at her grandson who was in good condition. She was finally relieved. Grandpa Chen asked, little boy, why did you capture an Eevee? Chen Shi was stunned, then looked at the dream on his shoulder and sighed helplessly. Don't worry about it. It just follows me to eat and drink. Speaking of this, Chen Shi got angry. He didn't know what was wrong with this dream. He couldn't be driven away, and he insisted on staying by his side. We have come to the Hoenn region, and this guy still wants to follow. Suddenly, he thought of something and said, by the way, Gardevoir, please help me get some of the energy cubes you usually eat for it. Gardevoir is also a psychic Pokémon, and its usual taste is sweet. It would be better to use her energy cubes for Mew. Originally, when Chen Shi said that it was eating and drinking for free, Mew was a little unconvinced, but when she heard that she was going to give herself energy cubes, she immediately laughed. Gardevoir didn't waste any words and soon brought back a few boxes of energy cubes. Mew patted Chen Shi's head, as if you are very sensible, I am very satisfied. Then she jumped off him directly, unpacked and started eating. As soon as she took a bite, Mew's eyes lit up. This is even more delicious than the one of Togekiss. This is indeed a long-term meal ticket. Little, you Eevee. Grandpa Chen hesitated, wanting to say something but couldn't say it. This Eevee gave him a very strange feeling, but he couldn't tell where it was strange. And you, an Eevee, why do you like to eat the psychic energy cube of Gardevoir before? Chen Shi glanced at it. Grandpa, don't worry about it, just let it eat. This time I have something happy to tell you. The attention of the two old men was immediately diverted. What happy thing? I became a senior researcher. Chen Shi laughed. Grandpa Chen laughed twice and said, little boy, I am also paying attention to the researcher forum. I know about the big things you did some time ago and became a senior researcher. Your grandmother and I know all this, you should tell us something we don't know. Chen Shi smiled, I recognized Professor Oak as my teacher. Grandpa Chen nodded slowly, oh, you recognized Shui Cheng as your teacher. But then, Grandpa Chen immediately reacted, stared at his grandson with wide eyes, and his voice suddenly increased by 8 degrees. What, you mean you are Shicheng's student now? Grandma Chen also looked at Chen Shi in surprise, and was shocked by the news for a while. Yes, I am now a student of Professor Oak. Good, good, Grandpa Chen said twice excitedly. He was really happy for this grandson. Others don't know who Oak Shicheng is, but doesn't Grandpa Chen know? He is the former champion of the Kanto region, with unfathomable strength and a wide network of contacts. Now that his grandson has become his student, he doesn't have to worry about his safety in this world in the future, and no one in the Alliance dares to touch Oak Shicheng's students. Chen Shi sighed. This trip to the Kanto region is really a big gain. Not only has it taken a big step in the field of researchers, but I have also become a student of Professor Oak. After that, Chen Shi talked to his grandparents about the life at Oak Research Institute and the experiences during this period. When they heard that Professor Oak took out a secret fragment, a tail feather of a flamingo, and a piece of steel legendary resource, the two elders were really shocked. They didn't expect that Professor Oak was so rich that he gave away 3 legendary resources at once. Among them, there was a secret core fragment, which could make Pokémon grow very quickly. You know, they had spent a lot of effort to get that dragon blood crystal before, but he gave 3 pieces. What else can they say? They can only sigh at Professor Oak's generosity. Then Chen Shi talked about the summer camp again, talking about all kinds of interesting things about those naughty children. The two elders listened quietly, asking a few questions from time to time. There was laughter at the table. In the evening, Chen Shi took a bath and lay on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling in front of him. Leafeon has returned to his nest, Pocket squeezed beside him, Lady Flower returned to her room, Swampert went to find his mother, and Dragonite also went to Tyrannosaurus. As for Metagross and Charizard, these two big guys can only live in the Pokeball. Little boy, please give me some space, I want to sleep in this bed too. Hearing this, Chenshi rubbed his temples and moved aside to make room for Dream. When there was no one else, this guy had returned to his original appearance. Although he looked pink and cute, his heart was black. At this time, he imitated Chenshi and lay comfortably on the bed. Suddenly, Dream always felt that something was missing, opened his eyes and glanced at the person next to him. Little boy, please give me a massage. Chenshi's forehead suddenly popped up a blue vein, and he suppressed the idea of kicking this black-hearted cat away and cursed inwardly. You dead cat, you eat my food, drink my water, live in my house, and now you order me around. It's because I just got home today and I'm in a good mood, otherwise I would have kicked you out a long time ago. Putting away his thoughts, Chenshi forced a smile, then stretched out his hand and pressed it. How is the strength? Meow. Wanwan squinted his eyes, enjoying Chenshi's service, and cried out comfortably. The next morning, after Chenshi finished his meal, he arranged for his friends to absorb the core fragments of the secret realm in the backyard. At this time, Grandma Chen suddenly called out, Shishao, here is your phone number, come quickly. Chenshi was stunned. Who is looking for me so early in the morning? But he did not delay, and immediately came to Grandma's side, picked up the phone and asked, Hello, I am Chenshi, what can I do for you? Old Chen, it's me, I heard you are back. Congratulations on becoming a senior researcher. I have been paying attention to the previous things. It's really amazing, Old Chen. Dao's voice sounded in his ears, and Chenshi was a little surprised. He didn't expect that he had just come back yesterday, and today his good friend called him. Dao, I'm back, come and sit with me when you are free. I have something to talk to you about. He did want to find Daiwu for something. He had always asked him to collect super stones before, and the matter of keystones had not been mentioned. Now that the World Championships are approaching, he should collect what he should collect. On the other side, Dao thought for a moment and replied, in the afternoon, I'll go there. Farong is with me, so we can go together in the afternoon. No problem, it's settled then. Chenshi agreed immediately. After hanging up the phone, Chenshi went to the basement to learn how to make top-level potions from his grandfather. Grandpa Chen has actually taught him many times, but because of some problems with the techniques and details, he has not been able to make top-level potions. In the basement, Chenshi held a measuring cup and concentrated on preparing the potion, not daring to split his mind. Grandpa Chen was watching from the side, giving instructions from time to time. Now, you can add 4.5 milliliters of the cold jade flower essence. Remember, you must use this standard test tube, and the amount is 4.5 milliliters, not more or less, you must look carefully. No matter how much or how little, it will cause the preparation of this medicine to fail. Hearing this, Chenshi poured the cold jade flower essence prepared in advance into an empty test tube, and after making sure that it just reached 4.5 milliliters, he slowly poured it into the measuring cup. Well, that's it. After adding the cold jade flower essence, use the number 3 jade stick to stir slowly clockwise until the color of the cold jade flower essence is completely invisible. You have to pay attention to this process. Keep your hands steady, don't rush, and take your time, otherwise it will cause the cold jade flower essence and the medicine to blend poorly, and this tube of medicine can be declared a failure. Chenshi did not dare to be careless, and slowly stirred the orange and blue liquid in the measuring cup. He did not dare to be careless at this step at all, he had failed at this step many times before. Chenshi emptied his mind, and his eyes were pink. The world seemed to disappear from his side, leaving only the workbench and measuring cup in front of him. Time passed by minute, and his hands kept stirring at the same frequency. Upstairs, Mengwan, who was sleeping late, suddenly opened his eyes and looked down. Meow, it is the power of the mind. Underground laboratory. After nearly 11 minutes, Chenshi was awakened by his grandfather's surprised shout, it succeeded, take out the jade stick quickly. Chenshi immediately reacted, pulled out the jade stick in his hand, and stared blankly at the orange liquid in front of him. This is the top energy calming potion, and he finally made it successfully. But Grandpa Chen was obviously more excited than him, and kept muttering something about a 16-year-old top pharmacist and the successor of the Chen family. Chen Shi's face was black when he heard it. After pouring the liquid in the measuring cup into the medicine tube and covering it, Chen Shi said speechlessly, "Grandpa, I just succeeded once, maybe it's just luck. Don't get too excited. Besides, there is no top pharmacist who can only make one kind of medicine." Hearing this, Grandpa Chen calmed down a little, but he couldn't stop smiling. With experience once, it will be much easier next time. You can learn other medicines slowly. After saying this, Grandpa Chen paused and sighed, "I was able to do this when I was nearly 50 years old. If this hadn't happened in front of me, I would never believe that someone could make a top medicine at the age of 16. Chen Shi frowned. His state just now was indeed a little strange, as if the whole world had disappeared, leaving only the workbench and measuring cup in front of him. There was only one voice in his heart, that is, he must succeed. It is estimated that only when he entered that special state can he successfully make the calming potion. It doesn't work at ordinary times. Family members know their own business. Chen Shi still has some ideas in his mind. You said that it is no problem for him to make advanced potions, but the top potions are not good enough. Far away. Grandpa only taught him the prescription, steps and techniques, so that he could familiarize himself with them in advance, but he never thought that he would succeed suddenly. Grandpa Chen was still excited. "You can definitely improve our potential potion to the master level. You can definitely do it." Chen Shi sighed and stopped talking. Their Chen family is most famous for the potential potion, which can improve the potential of Pokémon when they evolve. However, this potion has only reached the top level after generations of improvement by the Chen family, and can at most improve the potential of Pokémon to the semi-champion level. For Pokémon with potential above the semi-champion level, this potential is useless. This is also the reason why Grandpa and Grandma's Pokémon are stuck at the peak of the king. If you want to make it work for Pokémon with potential above the semi-champion level, you must improve this potion to the master level. Unfortunately, this is not so easy to do. Grandpa has studied it for a lifetime, but he still doesn't know how to start. Now the old man's wish to improve the potion is obviously placed on him. In this regard, Chen Shi could only smile bitterly and said, "Okay, Grandpa, I will try my best in the future, don't get too excited." "No, no." Grandpa Chen's expression immediately became serious. "Little boy, you can't try your best, you must do it. This has been tried since my grandfather's generation, and it has not been successful until now. But I believe you can do it." Grandpa Chen is 100% convinced of his grandson's talent. If even his grandson can't improve the potential potion, then Grandpa Chen will only think that the limit of the potential potion is the top. Chen Shi's eyes twitched slightly. "I know, Grandpa, I will definitely succeed, don't worry." Hearing the full confidence in his grandfather's tone, he could only answer like this. For the improvement of the potential potion, Chen Shi can only say that he has tried his best. If there is a chance to improve it, he will definitely do it without hesitation. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.